to wait for him to
Are
give
you-
us the thumbs
okay.
up.
Yeah.
Oh, right,
Oh, we don't have
share
a,
this.
we
I
don't
think
have
I
a
need
screen.
that
Should
much
we have a screen? Am I just missing something? Oh, just because we had it for you.
Just one
For
time I
that.
paid extra.
He was gone.
Are you ready? Oh, lovely. Okay. Good evening. I'm calling to order our Mount Shasta Planning Commission regular meeting for Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. And we'll start with this flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Jeff, roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyd,
Here.
Commissioner Cohn,
Here.
Commissioner Higuera,
Here.
Commissioner McDowell,
Here.
Commissioner Pardee,
Here.
Commissioner Sariano,
Here.
Chair Finley.
Here. I'm just going to throw in a little deal just because in front of public comments, just to let folks know that we have two new commissioners, one not so new, he's come back, Alan Pardee is
Are we being filmed?
joined us again. What?
Are we filming? We're filming still? We are.
We're on, I believe. And our new planning commissioner is Cindy Lee Cohn, and I just want to welcome you both for, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for your volunteering and your efforts, and look forward
Great to be here.
to spending time working with you on city projects. So now that folks know who these are, we'll move on to public comment. And this is a time set aside for residents to address the Planning Commission on matters not on this evening's agenda. If anybody is interested to speak to us, you would have 3 minutes, and you're welcome. Come up, introduce yourself, and we'll get going.
Hi, Johanna Altorfer. This is kind of related to the agenda item, but not exactly. So I think it's okay during public comment.
So if there's anything...
Stop me if it's wrong.
Okay, well, just, yeah, and, you know, we're doing the parklet ordinance and the tiny house wheels ordinance. We're not crafting those ordinances tonight. This is just getting started on them.
Yeah.
And so if you could keep those pieces separate,
Will do.
and then anything else, go right ahead.
Okay. So I sent an email to all of you today, and I think Jeff said he forwarded it to all of you. And so thank you, Jeff. I had a couple items on there. One was for parking dwellers that we have on our streets, because we have this property. We have the orchard and landing properties that the city owns. And I was really thinking part of what we could do with that land is to have, similar to the tiny homes concept, is to have land set aside there for people who live on the street in their cars, because we have people that live for extended periods of time, and some of them are regulars, and it would be nice to have a place where they could actually park their vehicles where they're not playing parking roulette with the code enforcement, even though that's not always being enforced anymore. And I had that same thought with the tiny house on wheels, which I don't think is being discussed tonight.
Yeah, we are.
Oh, you are discussing it?
Yeah,
Yes.
and
Okay.
Don't discuss
I
it.
won't discuss that.
Okay.
Anyway, so I just thought we own this land, let's put it to some good use, because, you know, people that live in their homes and come visit us, you know, they're not paying property taxes. Some of them smoke, and there's, I know, because last year I had visitors and they didn't want to they didn't want to walk on that side of the street because there was cigarette smoke and marijuana coming out of the vehicle. And sometimes it's just like a safety thing. You don't really know who's living in there. And anyway, so I just thought, we have this land, let's set a portion aside for the residents, and we could offer this like free service for our guests that prefer to have more temporary homes out of their cars. So anyway, that was pretty much it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for listening.
All right, anybody else like to speak with us about something not on the agenda this evening? And I'm not seeing anybody heading up, so we're going to move on to item 4, which is our consent agenda, and there's one item on there, the approval of the minutes from our January 2025 meeting, and if there's no changes that anybody wants to make to those, we can leave it on the consent agenda. Commissioners?
Just wondering, was that the case?
That,
You had him do the flag salute?
well, that's an interesting point. We're going to move it off the consent agenda and talk about it. And go ahead, can you?
So on the call to order and flag salute on the minutes, you have Vice Chair Sarian as the one who led the flag salute, and that, I don't remember hearing that. Usually it's Melanie. So if you guys are the two, oh, we're ringing.
I think she was there.
No, she is. That's what she says, present. She was present for the roll call.
Was I
I
there?
might have carried that over, yeah.
It may have carried.
From the
'Cause you were
21st?
gone.
I don't know, so I don't know what's accurate or what's not
No,
accurate.
it was Melanie, so I'll make the change.
Okay, so we're going to change that to Chair Findling for the first item. Anything else, commissioners? Okay, so if could entertain a motion to approve as amended.
I will so move.
All right, Vaughn has made the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Belinda seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. And motion is approved. But let me just add that you can actually move, you can vote on an item even if you weren't here, as it turns out, I've learned. I know.
I love it.
So you can.
So say yay.
Yeah. They nailed it.
How far back can they go?
It's just, well, if it's on the agenda, if it's an agenda item, it doesn't matter if you were there or not, whether you vote on it. is
On
my
the
understanding.
minutes.
On the minutes.
5, 6 years, what do you think?
Corrected on that.
Not the whole thing.
It's not whether he was a commissioner, it's that you're a commissioner now and you can vote on it. Okay. Moving on to item number 5, which is a discussion on our tiny house, on the possibility of having a tiny house on wheels ordinance. Jeff, please.
Thank you, Chair Findling. First of all, I want to enter into the record Johanna's comments. I had about a half an hour of time today to go over them, specifically with respect to the tiny house on wheels discussion. Without going line by line, suffice to say that there's some information in here that has been part of that is staff's consideration of the matter already. What I will do with these comments as we move forward with this discussion item and into an action item, I'll enter these into the record with city responses, so we won't lose them, okay? So that aside, what I'd like to do, unless anyone has questions specifically about Johanna's comments, we can consider those as we discuss the item. We don't need to address that right now. So don't feel pressured to have to dive into them here and now. I will provide a line-by-line response and enter that into the record prior to the next time we talk about this item. So, without further ado, what I want to do is talk a little bit about why we're here, specifically the tiny house on wheels discussion and future ordinance is an outcome of really two initiatives. One, the housing element actually speaks to tiny homes on wheels or tiny home villages, so it implements our recently certified housing element. It is also something that, as a consequence of that new legislative pressure, I took this item to seek direction from council and council gave us a green light to have at it. And so we did have one discussion here. The staff report touches on that briefly. The two choices were either easy as you go with tiny homes on wheels. That means we tweak our existing RV provisions, so we treat these as glorified recreation vehicles, and we modify that existing code. That really treats them like recreational vehicles, and all the zoning provisions there too. That is very restrictive about where they go. There is, as you know, mobile home zoning, which is specific to that, so it puts it in that category. As opposed to a full ordinance, which treats them as residential equals to stick-built construction, more or less. But for all intents and purposes, the direction that this staff report discusses, the analogs or the precedents that are included in the staff report go this direction. That is a full ordinance to allow them in a number of different zoning districts. Do not isolate them as RVs and treat them as such. The analysis that I want to touch on before we get into the discussion really goes deep into the gravity of detail on building code. But in order to be a building code certified tiny home on wheels, it needs to comply with Appendix Q of the tiny home building code regulations within the California Code of Regulations. So that's a body of information that highly regulates these living units to comply with a measure of standard for life, health, safety, and even general welfare of the community, which goes above and beyond the standards which certify other vehicles like RVs and even mobile homes and so on. So it's a higher standard. What we're talking about is a very specific set of standards and regulations that apply to the construction of these things. That gives them a higher bar to clear with respect to all sorts of things like citing utilities on board or connections to city utilities is a big one. And also, I think most importantly, from the conversations that we've had at a staff level and direction from council, the aesthetic value of these. How are they fitting into context? We touched briefly on the objective design standards as an overarching design framework and process to regulate the look and feel of these. And we all agreed that the more modular version of I'm forgetting the name now, the particular set of objective design standards, and I wrote the thing and now I'm forgetting. The broken mass, individual module types of these structures that are on one lot. So multiple structures on one lot.
Like the cottages?
Thank you. So the cottages are more analogous to a tiny home configuration on the same parcel. They kind of fit within that mass form scale. Part and parcel with the overarching, what I want to call the full meal deal ordinance is going to be treating these tiny homes on wheels as ADUs as well. So this would be another sort of concurrent tweak to our existing municipal code, which is our ADU code, which would essentially create a provision that says ADUs and tiny homes and wheels are treated synonymously moving forward. So that'll be a choice for you as well. It's not enough to go so far as to say we're allowing tiny homes on wheels in a village context akin to the objective design standards cottage format, but we're also saying that an ADU now can come before city approval regulations and be approved as a tiny home on wheel. So two separate sides to the same set of regulations. So keep that in mind as we discuss this. I've gone so far as to actually outline the purpose and intent, the definitions, the review authority, the general requirements, zoning districts, density, and site development standards and design standards, which were all pulled from some precedents in the region and throughout the state, and then provided you some precedent imagery of what, if regulated under a pretty robust set of standards, both site development standards and design standards, would look like. And I think the most important thing I learned here was that it's not just enough to say, we've got these things looking like we want them to look, and they're sited where we want them to be sited on a building or on a site in a zone, but that the common open space, screening, landscaping, access, parking also be addressed so that they're context sensitive. I'm finding that as I search these, and actually I visited a few when I was in Oregon last, and the ones that really do appeal to design sensibility are the ones where you appreciate arrival before you're even to the tiny home. There's a gateway statement, there's a sense of arrival, and almost a processional kind of experience where lots of common open space, lots of common amenity, and these kinds of things. So keep that in mind as well. And that is all I've got. I'm happy to answer questions before we dive into this. But I would recommend that we go through and take bites by my recommended content. The goal here tonight is not to craft the ordinance, but to get our heads around it collectively, make sure we understand its role in the municipal code, and then if you want to give me some directive that's clear around the content, I'll march forward, produce that content for folding into a public hearing process where we get public engagement in a public hearing, and we'll take as many hearings as it takes to get there. And then, as you know, we move forward to council with a recommendation and do first and second readings. So we have a handful of public hearings ahead of us to get to a final ordinance. So that's all I've got for you.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, well, that sounds like an opportunity for commissioners to start firing off questions, asking for clarity, and then I'll open it up to the public and get your input too. So how if we start at this end? David?
Come back to me.
Oh, okay. Tucson.
I have a couple questions to start. Would someone have the ability, like say someone owned a lot in the city, to just bring a tiny home in and put it on there as their primary residence? In this instance that you were talking about?
Again,
zoning?
you know, that's a choice to make for you all based on how you think these things, if designed under a very rigorous set of standards, would fit into community context. The answer is, if you set those standards and you're comfortable with the way they look and feel, you could pick a zone, you could condition ahead of time how big the lot sizes would be in order to do that. I have discovered that the precedents do treat tiny homes on wheels in essence as a single family dwelling. So if you owned a good maybe hypothetical case would be someone has a 5,000 square foot lot. They use the SB9 lot division process to ministerially subdivide that into two 2,500 square foot lots, keep a primary house on one, or even build a new primary house on one, an ADU on it, and put a tiny home village on it, if and only if it's in the zoning district that we recommend it be in, and it meet the site development standards that we would be crafting.
Okay. Also, I know that the building codes are very different for mobile homes compared to regular stick-built homes. How do you see that working with these tiny homes as far as what building code that they would be using, given that if they're given, from a zoning perspective, the same status as a regular stick-built home.
Right, so that's the gravity of detail that I think is worth exploring. The short answer is the Title 24, the
Oh,
California
hang on a
Code.
second, Jeff. We're getting feedback. Can you work on that?
Maybe this is too close. You can still get me.
Well,
Normally,
mine's,
we don't have any.
yeah, mine's,
Really? Okay. So CRC, or California Code of Regulations, has in it a set of standards for tiny homes. It's Appendix Q. It talks, and I've outlined a few of the key components of those regulations. So it specifies their size, their ceiling heights, the loft square footage, egress issues, among others. But those are the key components which drive the form of the structure. In my experience in kicking these tires a great deal, I can tell you that Appendix Q structures, so that is a tiny home built to Appendix Q, looks like a cottage. It doesn't look like an RV.
So the width, I didn't see a width maximum on here, but typically, if it's on wheels, it's going to be, maybe 8, 12 feet at the most. Are we saying that there might be an opportunity to get them wider?
No.
14 foot is what was in here.
14?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
That's true for mobile homes.
right. So they've got to be street legal. That's what defines, again, consistent with Appendix Q. So you'd see them small, able to navigate, and not only on public roads, but the height's regulated as well for overpass regulations. So they're going to be small. They're not going to be 1,200 square foot homes with wheels.
They just wouldn't have permanent foundations.
From the outside in, they would look like, and again, there's design standards that speak to skirting, which conceal the chassis, essentially. So from the outside in, and I think the best one that I've seen is the government camp one, or the one near government camp in Mount Hood, where they pay a lot of attention through an HOA and CC&Rs to regulate not only what they look like, a skirt much like this, turning what would otherwise appear as a picnic table into something more formal for our purposes. So I think the same can be carried off with a design treatment that is, akin to a cladding material that's consistent aesthetically with the exterior skin of the structure, and that's up to us, to you, to help us navigate.
Okay, that's it for now.
that's fine. Belinda?
So I do like the idea of the ADU and THOW as similar character. I don't know what there's, in our ordinance, RVs and mobile home parks are two different things, aren't they? I mean, a mobile home park is an RV park is, they get up and go. And they are, you can drive them yourself, that's an RV.
Yeah,
And a mobile home park would have to have a special person take the mobile home
Correct.
away or two, right?
Right, they're both allowed in mobile home park zoning, not
Yes, okay, they're both
R1,
allowed
2,
in
right.
mobile home. But they are, but there's no regulation on looks or design standards or anything like that? Okay. And is there somewhere, have we talked about, I read these things and I'm not sure I miss them, the distance apart each unit would be?
That's up to us.
So we haven't gotten there yet.
We did talk a little bit about the spacing standards, which was consistent with, again, back to the cottage courtyard cluster type of typology that is in our objective design standards. There's a spacing standard there which doesn't come to mind, but we've been here before
Yeah.
with small structures, and that's where we would start. And I think I would recommend that we explore some kind of spacing standards that's similar to that.
And then, that would almost be the same as if you had, whatever it's been so long, setbacks are at a regular home site. I mean,
Yeah, nothing in this would supersede any base zoning standards. That's the same with the objective design standards. It did not modify any underlying zoning. So R2's setbacks, R3 setback, C1, C2 setbacks would all prevail here.
from one property to another, but if you had the cottage thing, or if you had the THOWs, would they fall in having a setback between, that would be creating setbacks between those kinds of units, sort of, right?
Yeah, you mean, there's separation of structure and structure distance to property line.
Yeah, the structured.
Yeah, both of those are already resolved. We wouldn't, in other words, the separation of structure from property line is resolved in our chapter 816.
Yes,
Right, and the separation between units has previously been discussed in objective design standards, and that separation is a number I'm about to find for you. So,
Okay. And is there, I think there's something that we should consider, because this is a relatively new product, should I say? And at some point, they're going to get old, and we should consider putting in there some kind of age of the THOW and the condition of it, because if somebody moves out and somebody wants to move in with another one, it's not necessarily going to be a new one. In 10 years, there might be somebody that they're just moving different places, because that's kind of the idea of it. And I think there should be something in there a little bit about the condition of moving in a used one, so to speak. I mean, I'm not trying to be real discriminatory, but it's just like RVs or mobile homes. I mean, there are those that are just fine, and then there are those that are like, whoa, wait a minute, I don't want this one in my neighborhood.
yeah, essentially what you're saying is that, and I think the standards are so far crafted to reflect this, is that you're establishing a design envelope within which, and a condition and a character within which a new tiny home needs to fit.
Okay.
And if it doesn't, then that discretion lies with whoever the approval body is to say, I'm sorry, this is too much this and not enough that. There are RV parks where you can only park an Airstream. They do not allow,
Yeah, I know.
right?
That's
As an
kind of what
Airstream
was
owner, I
thinking
love
about,
them.
is that there was that. Okay,
So we're getting, that's kind of the same thought process.
okay.
Are you talking about maintenance or just the
No.
appearance?
Appearance. Because in 10 years, you're going to have things that are 10 years old, and that's different than a brand-new one. But it could have been totally taken care of, or it could have been beat up. Either one.
I mean, to address the maintenance issue, I mean, I would hesitate to, recommend that you hold one type of habitation to a higher maintenance standard over another type of habitation. If you go here with a rigorous set of maintenance standards, make sure that they exist for other forms of single-family dwellings, like my neighbors, et cetera. So keep it in mind that
This is mobile. That's
No.
the difference.
Well, keep in mind, too, that Appendix Q is creating something that is, in essence, more cottage and less mobile. It's a home on wheels. And I think once we get that as a group, I think the regulations are within this body politic. We can create any form we want, any cladding we want, any means of protecting aesthetics with a sense of compatibility with the neighborhood. I don't think that I'm just deferring to the group here, but I don't think the word mobile is helping, or in fact, I would even go so far as to say, I think the idea that what comes with something being mobile takes away from its viability as a residential unit.
Well, a mobile home. I mean, we consider those homes, they're not RVs. And so, I mean, it's gonna be depending on who interprets it however they want, a little bit. And that's
Right,
what I mean, because they're putting them on wheels. And the whole point that I have heard about it is so that you can, I'm going to move to Oregon, to this other cottage area, and that makes it mobile. I can't move my house.
No, I understand the difference, but what I guess I'm struggling with, when you're talking about a standard to mitigate its mobile appearance, let's move beyond that and talk about the specific standards that you're thinking about. So if mobility is the hang-up, how do you mitigate, if you will, its mobile nature? You make it less like an RV, right?
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
It's a different headspace.
Right.
So, that's all.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, they're gonna, somebody, hopefully whatever HOA or group that is in control of the situation will keep it really nice and together. And I suspect that's what they want, everybody wants.
Right.
You
And
know.
we need to have those standards very clearly spelled out in
Yeah,
detail.
but I just worry a little bit that in the future, I'm worrying down in the future, so I won't worry right now anymore. Okay, I'm done,
All right,
past done.
thanks. Vaughn? We gotta get your mic, get ready. There you go.
Okay.
Maybe closer.
So, I mean, the concept I understand, and the reasoning behind it I understand. And it's easy to get caught up in the details because that's where the devil is here on these. It's where I'm thinking questions like, well, if it's going to be an ADU, do I want an ADU, a two-story ADU next door to me in somebody's backyard? Well, that's, okay, some of the pictures, I think,
There's descriptions in the Q, whatever, what he was talking about.
yeah.
There'd be a loft, but it's
Okay.
a two-story.
Yeah, because, I mean, they were talking about ceiling height, so, okay. But
Yeah,
I
these
wasn't sure
would-
if that
these
was
would
one
read-
story or two.
These would read as single-story structures with potentially a dormer and a half, second
So
story,
one
which
and
is
a half
concealing a
story.
loft.
Okay,
1.5, yeah.
all right.
Smaller than ADUs.
Okay, and what's to keep somebody from, I mean, I'm struggling with a lot of the concept. I'm thinking about all the things that can go wrong, like somebody deciding they want to make one a double wide one, or somebody decides that they want to use containers instead, put wheels on it or whatever. I don't know. These are just thoughts that are rolling around in my head. I'm wondering if there's going to be an HOA. I'm wondering if there's going to be a red flag was when you mentioned about where they could split, like a 5,000 square foot lot into 4. And would I want one of those as a homeowner, not a snobby homeowner, just somebody who wants to protect their value of their property next door. And so the biggest concern I have is, have we ideas about where exactly one of these places or these places would go other than on a single story lot, which doesn't sound all that pleasing to me?
It's up to you guys. You pick the zone. You say maybe it only belongs in commercial zoning or R3 zoning.
Was there a
So
different
it's-
zoning that we can have for something like this? I guess not. I'm just,
Well, then you're back to, again, my preface to this was, there are 2 paths to regulation. One is easy as you go. You tweak the existing code and you make little moves in the code to give this type of development pattern a foothold. under highly regulated site-specific zoning regulations and design and development regulations. Other than, as compared to a ordinance which gives them more licensure to be more broadly applied citywide. I will tell you that tiny homes on villages, tiny homes on wheels or tiny home villages is the buzz phrase that is the latter, right? It's not just tweaking our RV code and our mobile home code to say, yeah, well, you can post up your tiny home in one zoning district in town. City Council and the housing element have made it very clear that they want us to really explore a broader application of this building typology throughout our community. So questions like yours around the fear construct, what happens when something goes wrong, let's take a deep dive into it, and then let's craft regulations to protect against that.
I guess part of it is, and I'm wondering, why can't they just put a tiny home in a mobile home park?
They can.
Then why don't we just do that?
What's the,
Because not all of us want that.
Well, I
what's the
understand.
difference between a tiny home village and a mobile home park? Besides the size of the structure?
The building code standards and where it goes ultimately. Well, the short answer to your question is there is no difference because tiny homes on wheels don't exist in our town. They're not codified, and there's no examples.
Aren't they just a mobile home, just smaller?
You could pull a mobile home right now or a tiny home on wheels and pull it into the KOA.
But he's right. That's exactly the point.
Now, what you're saying is that you want to treat these as that and that alone, then we're done with this discussion. There's no regulatory change that we need to make, because right now you can pull a tiny home on wheels into mobile home park zoning and park it there.
Aren't we just making more mobile home
That's-
or RV parks, but just limiting the size of the structure?
The design of the structure and the size and the site configurations. None of those regulations exist in our municipal code presently. That's
So you're just basically allowing the expansion of mobile home parks to the whole city outside of R1?
No.
Yeah?
That's what could happen. I
No,
think that's what the fear is, or at least my worry.
Again, this
It's
is
just
not,
disguised as calling it a tiny home, but
this
it's...
is,
yeah.
I want to be clear about something. I'm the fence
semantics.
post in this discussion. My job is to advise you as to the consequences of your choices. I feather in best management practices when possible, and I also bring precedent code from other communities, which makes sense to us. At the very outset of this, I tried to make it clear that RV parks and mobile home parks are built to different sets of standards, both design of structure and design of site.
Oh, could you it might help us right now if you gave us a brief explanation of those differences. So we can, if you can.
So, right, so let's take, for example, I'll bring your attention to the precedent image in the staff report.
Is that on the first page of that item? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah,
With the little Adirondack chairs?
so that and the images which appear in attachment A.
Like, page 10, the bottom photo, I mean, that basically looks like a mobile home park, just not mobile homes. They're tiny homes instead of mobile homes.
Right. So they're tiny homes built to Appendix Q, which says cladding material, which talks about access, which talks about fenestration, which talks about roof pitch, which talks about all sorts of design representation that makes it look and feel more like a small cottage than a mobile home or an RV. So in answer to your question, is there a difference? I would submit, yes, there's a difference, because the code that you're about to craft or vote against crafting is going to make them look like however you want them to look, and however you all, as a group, find is aesthetically pleasing to meet the context of the city of Mount Shasta, and not look like a mobile home park or an RV park. That's the challenge before you. Because it's been clear that City Council wants us to explore this, to get creative here. City Council has been very clear about diversifying housing opportunities to address affordable housing in this community. And the housing element specifies this building type or this housing product type by title. So it's not an RV park, it's not a mobile home park, it's a tiny home on wheels village. And it's up to us to design it, so there's a difference.
So, because we say mobile home, but I think the term we're supposed to use now is manufactured home? Is that more with current practice?
I just tell you what the code calls it.
Oh, okay. Because I know we've also, we can't, my understanding is that we can't say if somebody wants to put a mobile home on their, do we even still have R1? Is R1 just gone? Because we say R1, but, R1 sort of functionally doesn't exist anymore because you can put a duplex anywhere?
Well, that doesn't take away from R1. R1 still has minimum lot standards, it
Okay.
still has bigger
Okay.
setbacks, it still has, lots of things that R2 and R3 do not have.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, so somebody can put a manufactured home in an R1, on an R1 lot, by right.
Yeah, someone could do a prefabricated, factory-built home certified by HCD, and all we would ever see is the foundation permit. They can do that under current state law in our zoning ordinance, sure.
The difference between a manufactured home and
It's not a mobile home, it's not a mobile home and it's not an RV, but it's a manufactured home.
A manufactured home is a foundation, a permanent foundation.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. This is clarifying, thank you.
Now, they do arrive in parts on wheels. And the chassis, the wheels are dropped, but they're still there. And they're put on a block foundation, and then someday that block foundation is taken away, and chassis are still there, and they put wheels on them, they tow them off-site.
It's got a DMV license plate on it, right?
What does?
One of these homes. Has to.
Yeah, when it's on the road, yeah. So they're licensed for similar to any other vehicle that is towing, has a trailer, yeah.
I'm just kind of getting lost, and I think it sounds like semantics, and that's the problem I'm having with it.
I've been in manufactured homes that are like as good as a house, right? They're big, they're double wides, they're nice, they're really nice.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
there's
likewise.
mobile homes that are 12 feet wide and 40 feet long. And that's two different animals. And that's an RV park and a mobile home versus a modular home or manufactured, home. They're different things. And the tiny home, in some ways, almost goes a little closer to the manufactured home because it's solider. It's more aesthetically pleasing, generally speaking. So, yeah.
Are we, Vaughn, hold on, maybe. Are we-
Sorry.
Almost. So, to me, just for the record, if I'm putting the semantics aside, to me, it's a mobile home. That's just the way I see it, for whatever it's worth. Alan, it's all yours.
Okay,
Sorry, Alan.
go ahead. Thank you. We had to make sure Vaughn was done.
So, are these steel built typically, or are they wood and steel? They have some narrow walls with some wood in them?
Again, I haven't committed Appendix Q to memory, but I don't think they specify steel frame construction, no.
Is that what you're seeing when you're like in wood or whatever?
The ones I've seen are wood frame, yeah. I've seen them built,
Frame, cladding,
yes.
wood cladding?
Yes, wood cladding as well.
We're just finishing up a bunch of 500 square foot homes in Ashland, homes, foundations, but they're all steel sided.
Now, again, as far as
Fire.
finish, exterior skin of the structure goes, that's up to us too. We could say wood or wood product, wood-like product. Most single-family homes are not built today with real wood sidings.
So how would this happen? If I would come to town, I have a 5 acre site out here, I want to develop it as a such and such unit. I want to have one of the units myself to start out with, and then I'm gonna, do they
yeah, these aren't parceled, they are single parcels, yeah.
You turn a site plan that shows where the units could go, how the utilities to support those units are
Right,
provided.
right.
We can establish, say, buffer zones between specific zones and stuff like that if we wanted to. Let's say we're up against R1 or whatever it is now.
Mm-hmm,
And we want to have a 20 or 30-foot setback, we can do that
mm-hmm,
as part of this.
mm-hmm.
We can require, you talked about some of them that you went into that have a real sense of arrival. And I actually like the idea of when we do this, if there be somebody on site having ownership or supervisory or something like that. There's no problem.
Mm-hmm.
So we can divide it up. There's something in here on the, there's 9, once it's over more than 9 units, we have more authority or there's more?
That touches on a question that Belinda asked, which I have an answer to now, but the current typology and objective design standards that is most similar is a cottage court. It is a group of up to 9 small detached house-scale buildings arranged on a single site with an open courtyard. So that's the objective design standards that that is now in effect in the city. It has a 7-foot separation requirement, excuse me, between cottages. The cottage dimensions, so to answer your question, the number 9 comes from that standard because it just fits reasonably with something we've already done. And the separation between those cottages at 7 feet was met building code for this type of construction, and also gave enough flexibility on moderately sized sites to concentrate them and to provide more residual room on the parcel to buffer landscape, common area, et cetera.
That's a minimum 7 foot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we could, we have a distance between them that we could establish. I'm assuming we could establish a percentage of open space if we wanted to, you know?
The
It's in the
object,
cottage court.
the objective
Yeah,
design.
it's, I mean, we
right.
could keep that, I
You,
guess.
yeah, and so I guess my job from this point forward is, as we get into these kinds of details, make sure that you guys are aware of and reminded of the fact that we've got those objective design standards that may or may not apply, and they may literally
Right.
translate, but they may not. So,
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
I'll let you know if that,
In terms of fire access, you talk about a 20-foot wide, would it have to meet all fire standards? I mean, like turning radius?
Yeah.
Load-bearing capacity?
oh, yeah, so appendix,
turnaround.
yep, they got to get there,
Okay.
right? So,
All those would be in
site
place.
ingress egress becomes, a tow vehicle, turning radius, and design vehicle that's beyond just a single-family vehicle. It's going to be, potentially up to 50 feet long. So there's got to be enough navigating room to get in and out of these places.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
And for the fire vehicles to get in and out.
Absolutely. Those two tend to be somewhat synonymous. I know the fire standards are right in there with RV standards.
Depending upon the height of the building.
Right.
But yes. And in terms of this skirting and stuff like that, we could say skirting and must be installed and established or approved prior to occupancy or something like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. That's all I had. Thanks.
All right, thanks. Cindy Lee.
Give her, there. Really, give her the microphone.
Oh, give her,
What did you think I was going to say?
can you hear me?
Yeah.
What did I do? What did I do? So I'm going to ask for some grace because this is my first meeting and I'm going to probably ask questions or say things that might be obvious to some others.
A little closer. You're talking to.
You
yeah.
can pull it close, yeah, if you need
It
to.
won't
maybe.
Oh, I guess you can.
Won't move.
Wow.
I can move though.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'm understanding, Jeff, is that we as a body are having this opportunity to look at what all the elements that would be involved in creating the aesthetics and the property design the CCNRs that we'd want to put into place so that if there were a tiny house village or a cottage, group of cottages being built, that these have been laid down first so that there's an understanding that there's an agreement about how that's going to move forward. Am I understanding that
Yeah,
correctly?
so, yes.
Except that we already have the cottage part.
Right, right. So
That's in place already. So this is just applying it to the tiny homes on wheels.
right. And I didn't see in here what the height requirement was, the maximum height.
I think they, offhand, I want to say they're 14 feet-ish. They tend to, again, that's 13 and change, somewhere between 13 and 14 feet.
Okay.
They're well below the 16-foot height limit for ADUs.
Okay. Well, I just want to acknowledge that this is a very exciting place to be in, to be able to look at what the different designs that already exist, what they look like for us to, as a group, to take a look at what would fit this town if we wanted to move ahead with such a design. That's it.
Okay. Do you want to try, you want to give it another go?
Yeah. What would limit us from just applying our cottage ordinance that we have now to allow tiny homes on wheels, but just require them to be on permanent foundations? So that you can build those projects at a lower cost, use a tiny home on wheels, it just is on a permanent foundation.
Wait, so did I hear you say you're going to bring a tiny home into a site and drop it onto a foundation?
Yeah,
Manufactured home.
but why?
Well, it's your code to write,
But
so nothing
I-
is.
But why, I mean, couldn't you append our cottage ordinance that we have now to use tiny homes on wheels as long as they're on a permanent foundation?
You could.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not against them, I don't like the idea of being able to just pick it up and move at any time and the fluctuation of occupancy at the development.
And they're not on wheels anymore, though.
Yeah, but it saves on the investment for the project, buying one of these for 50, 60,000 instead of building a 400,000, or, a 400 square foot house at $300 a square foot.
Maybe we could ask a tiny home village that's already been in existence how much the turnover is.
Well, but it sounds like couldn't we do that too?
Huh?
I mean, yes, I think that would, the turnover is interesting.
Maybe I buy a
But
piece of.
doesn't our existing cottage design standard allow for manufactured cottages?
I don't think it really says.
I mean,
I think it could.
it doesn't, it seems like it wouldn't preclude them, just like we can't, because we aren't allowed to preclude manufactured homes on an R1, which is our most restrictive place for residential. I would think that our cottages could be manufactured and plopped in. Would you say that that's the
Sure.
case? So we already have that. So this is really adding, we just want to have, there's a market for wheeled houses.
Yeah, I think, again, this is putting my best management practices hat on and understanding the intent behind tiny homes on wheels. Sure, building them on wheels, dragging them on site on wheels, and then my enforcement hat goes on and says, okay, now you're dragging it onto a site, and I want to see those wheels off, and I want to see a solid foundation that we're going to permit. So we have a regulatory hook and an enforcement mechanism in the form of a foundation permit, and they build a foundation. And building a foundation requires expense that, frankly, with my best management hat on again, is not consistent with the intent of the standard to create housing that is affordable by design. What you've done is add a regulation that makes it more expensive.
That's,
Okay.
what I was gonna say was, it's really gonna come down to the code. That's what, makes the big difference in cost. So if we're treating these like, you know, let's say mobile homes, then they're not gonna have the energy standard to comply with the fire safety, the solar requirement, et cetera. So that's where my mind goes, because I deal with this all the time. If you put them on permanent foundations, then you're right, it brings it up to a more expensive,
Modular.
yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I would, you know, the devil's advocate position would be that they become something other than tiny homes on wheels. They become something more analogous to what Melanie's talking about, which is potentially a factory-built ADU placed, you know, potentially even craned in on site and dropped on a
And we can
foundation.
do that right now.
We can do that right now. Right.
Could we establish timeframes, a minimum commitment of 5 years, or I don't know, a minimum commitment to leave your tiny home in place for X?
I think it's completely up to you all to come up with a set of standard CC&Rs.
Is that anything, putting on your
Yeah.
other hat? Is that like, what a stupid idea?
I would say that maybe defensibility is a suspect on that. I mean, I don't know of an analogous rental circumstance where the city says you qualify as permanent housing, by the code, you're longer than 30 days, and we're going to require you, because you're just a different thing, to not only meet that bar, but also
Well, I
sign a
guess,
minimum 5-year lease. I'm not sure.
I guess it's lesser than all those same arguments, but okay, but if you take the wheels off and put a permanent foundation on, you can stay. I mean, I'm just trying to,
Yeah, right.
how do we,
I'd say it's shades of gray, right? I mean, you're saying, my best management hat is squarely around my ears on the subject of housing, only because we need to treat as a community all forms of housing equally. You can't distinguish through a
Right.
set of more or less rigorous standards a given type of housing, because it brings with it something that is unique, different, or therefore stigmatized. That's the part we need to, back to our conversation, I think you need to get to a point where, okay, this is a big pill to swallow, and the housing landscape is changing as we speak, for the worse, and what are we gonna do about it as a policymaking body to advise our council?
And it is not cheap to move these tiny homes around.
Yeah, it is. You hook them up
You
with a
just
truck
plug
and
it
tow
to
them.
No, you have to have they're wide, and you have to have the correct license. The driver, I can't,
Not
because
one
I don't
wheels.
have,
yes, she's
yes,
right.
I am right. I know
Yeah,
this.
she's right. I can't pull my 3/4-ton truck in and pull a tiny home.
No, you can't. It's illegal. You have to have a special
Yeah.
driver's license. You have
And
to
a
have a
special
truck
permits.
driver's. Huh?
Special permits
Yeah.
for oversized
Because
loads. that's
it's
what
wider and you have to have.
It's not that it's not doable. It's
Yeah,
not that it's
it's-
prohibitively expensive.
You know,
I
you could do
can't
it-
do it.
You could do it in the middle of the night, I suppose, and see how far you got.
I drive up and down Highway 5 a lot, and the reason why I said I thought you could is because I see those behind an F-350 fairly often.
They're not tiny homes.
Well, it looks like one of these to me.
It's
What
the
do you
width.
call it?
Mandatory size
Well,
dimensions of.
I just know this because the
height.
Nordic ski area has a thing being built that we could take down there, but now that they're building the house on it, on this frame, the person that took it down cannot bring it back because he doesn't have the right trailer or licensing.
That's a
So I know,
structure.
it's the width and it's the length.
Well, anyway, so
It's-
I think
it's
that
just not
that's,
that easy.
that's going to be
Huh?
managed.
And wait.
But perhaps, maybe this will clarify a little bit. Does the tiny house go with a person? A person buys a tiny house and moves it in? Or does somebody own 6 tiny houses and rents them to people? It's different people, and people can move in and out, just like they would out of an apartment.
Yeah,
Part of my next question.
the example that I visited in near Mount Hood is The latter? Yeah.
Like an
single site-
apartment.
Yeah, a single site owner. He built all the tiny homes.
On wheels.
And drug them in there and placed them, and it looks great, and he leases them out. And they're all leased out just like any other single-family dwelling.
Oh.
Annual leases, month to month after that.
But for less money because they're smaller.
Right, and so
Yeah.
his cost of, doing business is an order of magnitude less than a conventional stick-built home on a foundation, and therefore, he's providing an affordable housing service to his community. It's well-managed, well-maintained, and, frankly, it passes the would you live there test for me.
Is it zoned commercial then? Or is it zoned multifamily?
No,
What is it
this
zoned?
particular project is zoned rural residential.
And they have how many how many of
Units.
these tiny homes on this one parcel?
I think they have nine or 10.
And again, we can establish a max.
Oh, yeah,
or a
right now,
density.
we're floating 9 because it's in the objective design standards.
The caveat here is it's a different situation if there's one owner that has 9 of them as rentals, and then it's basically like whatever it was on Old McLeod, the Nest, but tiny homes, versus what was presented to us a couple months ago, that it's a lot that they develop with 9 sites, and the people come in and as they pick and choose and bring their tiny home in, stay for X amount of days, and then leave. Which in that case, it's basically an RV park for tiny homes.
Yeah, either model passes, if they're built to Appendix Q, either model works
Well, I think
from an aesthetic standpoint.
but I think for our tiny home village, we need to designate, is this you can lease the space, or is it a development where they're there by one owner?
I think that if you did the latter, if you did one owner for all 9 units, you'd have it's very unlikely that you'd see this development typology flourish. I don't think that you would see.
Well, didn't you just reference one?
I did, and I think that if you're going to set regulations to preclude this type, then you would do that. But all I'm talking about is from a design standpoint, I think it's a good project.
Could we
So
have an
if I
on-site
were-
manager?
I'm sorry?
An on-site manager?
They
though?
do.
I mean, could that be one of our,
I just don't like the idea of redefining basically what a mobile home park is. Yeah, it is. It's just a mobile home with a different
I know,
structure on
I
it.
don't agree.
So,
Well, David, you're a man of definitions, right? So I tell you, the building code defines mobile home and tiny home differently. They're not the same.
The land use is the same.
The land use is a cottage typology.
I think cottage is a much better description of them.
so, like, how are they different, maybe, is, for instance, I think of a mobile home park, you can park your vehicle right next to your mobile home.
I mean, page,
This one does that, right, there's a
I
page
mean,
in here that has it right
besides
next to
the
it.
structure, that is a mobile home park.
I've never seen a mobile home like that.
I
But
said besides the structure.
Right, so
Yeah, but you don't have to have, you can put something, we could put something in our ordinance that said
can just throw
it can't
something in if
be
you want.
linear, it has to be, I don't know what the term would be, but
Articulated, is that the term?
angled. No, kind of like, a cottage thing is,
I would submit that, David, if
Articulate.
you have aesthetic challenges with that, then give us a set of standards that mitigate it for us, or for you.
I still haven't heard the difference that Melanie had asked you about.
Like,
Which is what?
What is the difference between a mobile home park and a tiny home on wheels park?
A mobile home is defined as a structure built under a completely different set of regulatory parameters a tiny home village, it's like comparing a multifamily unit and a single-family unit. Okay, so, or a type 3 construction and type 1 construction. So
Actually, don't know
wood
what that is.
frame over a concrete podium versus 5 stories of steel. I mean, it's a vastly different building regulatory framework.
In-
Different definitions.
In terms of
the-
site planning, in terms of site design,
They're the same.
in terms of site design, although they might require a little bit more room because they're slightly wider, maybe not, aren't they, isn't it a road that comes through with park places for these units to go? I mean, you can almost say that of some of the subdivisions I've designed too, but they're bigger. But,
Yeah, I mean, I would say that if you compared it with, let's say, an apartment building.
yeah. Well, no, because that's multi-buildings with multi-units in it.
Well,
These
this
are-
still, I think this still meets the definition of a multifamily project because it's got multiple, the Nest is a multifamily project. So let's take the Nest, for example.
Okay,
The Nest, those Nest units could be tiny homes.
yeah, they could be.
It is not a mobile home park,
Okay,
right? So you have skirting standards, you have landscaping standards, you have common area standards, you have site access and egress standards, you don't have pull-through provisions, you have utility standards so that all the utilities go underground to a central location. They don't go to a standpipe with a sewer cleanout.
Oh, really?
You know, it's these kinds of aesthetic components that, again, once we get our brains collectively around the distinction, I think the universe of regulatory possibility will open before us. I think we really need to understand that these aren't mobile home parks, they're not RVs, they are regulated and recognized by California regulations as something else. This is pioneering policy we're creating. And then the direction that we have in the form of a housing element and a city council directive is to get creative and go there.
So
Well,
it sounds like we
suggesting-
need to find a place. I wouldn't want this just anywhere, but I'd like it,
Yeah.
I like the idea of having them. We do need to increase affordable housing.
Yeah, and so when you have, I would love to press on, the best way to fix something, frankly, is to understand what you don't want to see and mitigate it, rather than try to get where you want to be and create it.
So what don't you like about mobile home parks?
There's nothing that I don't like about them, it's just it doesn't make sense that if we have a mobile home ordinance that has certain restrictions to it, why aren't we utilizing that instead of calling it something else?
Tiny homes are regulated differently by the state.
Okay, so,
just
and
their
it-
name.
It's just a
Right.
different structure regulations, it's not a different,
Mobile
It's a
homes,
sleight of hand.
oh, so hang on, we're gonna
Yeah.
come back to the
the whole thing about
difference.
being able to pull through.
It
It's just a
sounds
sleight
like one of the differences is that you don't have the, I don't know, like you go to a RV park and you've got the plug-ins and all that right next to your site. Instead, that's all underground and integrated. So that would be one difference that makes it different from a mobile home park. Aesthetically nicer, one might think. And I don't know what all of those are, although I think it might be, I think it would be super helpful for this crowd to have those differences spelled out, maybe, so there was more clarity. Because I, to your point, David, I think replicating something that we already have seems unnecessary.
Seems
And
right.
it seems unnecessary to replicate something that we already have. If we could do it with our existing framework, why don't we do that? But it sounds like there's enough difference.
because our existing framework doesn't allow for expansion of mobile home parks into all of these areas listed, whereas we make these small mobile home parks, now it can be rewritten to go into all these other areas.
If they look cute enough.
Yes.
And is that how does,
Is it different enough?
is it different enough, aesthetic enough, and meeting our goals of providing more housing, which I think we all agreed is really important? Can we do that in a way that fits in the city?
Okay, so.
It seems like a worthy effort.
I think a big difference is the units look a lot different. I mean, the mobile homes, other than it might say adventure
It's
or
got it's a rectangle.
monarch or whatever, it doesn't, they look a whole lot more similar, at least than what I'm seeing.
Like a rectangular block with
So-
a roof.
So the concept, I mean, I'm with David on this, but I'm also on Alan on this. The bigger question is, first of all, I don't think, why should we rewrite something? We kind of already have it. We just put a different kind of house on it, A. And B is where? You know, I don't want them all around town. I want them concentrated like a mobile home park would be.
Well, I think
And-
there's two things. We're also going to consider that we would allow them to be ADUs. So that would go in
Which I'm
anybody,
not nuts about, but okay.
an ADU. So you can build in any of our backyards in the city, front yard, you can build an ADU by right today. I mean,
And that can be one of these.
and instead of a stick-built ADU, it could be a tiny home on wheels ADU.
And-
That's part of our conversation.
And as part of that is, I'm hung up on this thing where somebody's got a 5,000 square foot lot, and he puts 4 of these houses on it, but it's just zoned what, R2 still?
We have density goals.
Yeah, it depends on the degree of affordability. The density bonus law, you can double any density in town. So these could come in at 100% affordability, 100% affordable projects or rent rates, 20 to 40% AMI, and they could be granted a corresponding density bonus.
I think,
That's throughout any type of,
I think conceptually, the thing on top of that is I don't want to get hung up on, I get the idea is to try and make something cheaper, but making something cheaper, there's going to be some people that are just never going to be able to afford a house, unfortunately. And I don't want to disrupt the value of our town and the concept of our town trying to make something cheap. So there's got to be this kind of a splitting of the baby somewhere.
yeah. So I think we're at a point at which we need to take a straw poll, because these are two diversions. It's a diversion of thought. Either, back to what is the entry-level question to this. Do you want to modify our existing Chapter 1608, which is park regulations, to include tiny homes?
Park regulation?
Yeah, it's our mobile home code.
No.
Say that again?
Yeah, I didn't hear that.
Okay.
What would be excluded from it currently?
They wouldn't be, but this is to your point. You're saying, since we already have the regulations, why are we creating new regulations? What in essence is the real difference? And I sense a struggle that is not quite a quorum, but close. So I think, rather than, and I'm sensing that the clock's ticking and we've got a lot to do, that maybe what I do is, at your prompt, Melanie, is put these up, frame these up side by side, so that you understand the difference between what an RV park is in look, feel under current regulations, and what an Appendix Q project would look like in a similar context, so that you really can get your head around the real difference. And if at that point you say, well, why don't we just expand our mobile home provisions to tweak them to include design, look, feels component that gets us to some hybrid of RV and mobile homes and tiny homes all on kind of one. I don't like that. It doesn't feel right to me, because there's you would preclude one from the other by setting up those standards.
Is the zoning on a mobile home park way more restrictive than it might be for a tiny home?
Yes. Yeah,
that's what I-
very much so. And they also have minimum roadway requirements. A lot of the kind of the look, feel of the village construct, that is, there's seating areas and they look more pedestrian. And
Common spaces.
they're smaller than some of these large RVs that are coming through with large rigs driving all over the place, with anybody on vacation.
But there are mobile home parks with swimming pools and guest center and
Yeah, and
all
they
that
are,
kind of thing too.
and they are highly regulated for mobile home structures, right? Not tiny home structures. Those mobile home park
Right.
structures are
But
larger.
we're talking about something new anyway, right? So why wouldn't we just use the mobile home park concept and use the CC&Rs for tiny homes?
Well, I think we would be going, I think to do the tiny home ordinance, we need to go a lot farther than a mobile home park. Because I think these can have some charm. I think there's some places in town that you could tuck one in without, and you don't have to have 9, you can have fewer than 9. And you could tuck them in, you can integrate affordable housing that we need. We want folks who are working in the retail shops to be able to walk to work. Then I'd like to tuck it into lots within towns. And I'm not sure that our existing mobile home ordinance is close enough to that. I think there'd be so much work we'd have to do to that why not just leave that
Right.
alone? Let's get where we want to go so we can do a tiny little spot, tuck a few in here, and we've created, 4 affordable units for people so they can walk to work.
And then you got salt and pepper neighborhoods and people's values are affected.
Oh, I disagree completely. I think if you integrate neighborhoods and make them more complex and more interesting, you've got more people walking around town, you have more people, more activity in your neighborhood, and that increases your safety and your neighborhood feel. More kids walking to school. I'm
The whole
all into
affordable
that.
housing thing, all the stuff that's mandated, it already takes care of that. It's gonna do that anyway. They're gonna put houses wherever they wanna put houses.
I don't see why having this next door to me decreases my property values.
Well, then
I think it's cute.
that's a good place for one.
It would be. Honestly, the house that's next door to me, it's
I just
empty.
don't want one in my street. I
It's-
think it would hurt the values, I really do. That's why I think I like the idea of them having concentrated someplace.
What zone
Still
are you?
solves the problem of having, allowing this more affordable neighborhood, make it a neighborhood, and, and have it concentrated instead of spread it all around.
I think we could do both.
Willy-nilly, I don't like that idea, I'm just saying I don't.
Well,
But I'm only one
Are you
person here.
R1? Is that your zoning that you live in? Because you probably won't be affected by this unless it's an ADU. It's like, there's a lot of commercial lots that have the ability right now on Mount Shasta Boulevard to do this. That would
I
be-
live on the President's, so
Yeah, so you're R1.
Can I ask another pedestrian question? As it stands right now, my understanding is that zoning is in place, that anybody...
can't hear you.
As it stands right now, it's my understanding that zoning is in place for people to put tiny homes on their property, if in the zoning. So I just to your question, it's already happening.
in a backyard, I guess an ADU typically is going in somebody's backyard, out of sight. And I don't know, are we renting these ADUs out? I guess some people are, I don't.
absolutely.
Yeah, I have one, but it's not I don't rent it out, but I have one.
So I think we might be a little bit stuck here, and I want to make a little more progress. And I actually did have some comments. I don't know, I mean, there is sort of, let me finish out my comments, and then I think we'll go to how are we going to approach this. Oh, and we still have public comment. I haven't forgotten you all. Thank you. I guess I would want, and I don't have to have answers to these all tonight, Jeff, but kind of our rationale for how we would space these, for the spacing standards, I would want to have some idea about that. Can you explain to me, you say there is a higher standard for tiny homes, and the higher standards are, can you just give me a quick synopsis of what those higher standards are?
Appendix Q goes into a great deal of detail, and to answer your question, I brought it up. They talk a lot about, from dimensions, windows, egress, ingress, egress,
Is this
ceiling
egret-
heights,
Oh, so from the unit itself, egress,
lofts,
ingress.
minimum
Okay.
area, minimum dimensions, height, effective height of the loft area, stairways, headrooms, treads and risers, landing platforms, handrails, size and capacity, incline, alternating, et cetera. This goes on for,
How about
To a deg-
construction quality?
I'm sorry?
Construction quality, not just the things, but
Yeah.
is it?
There's materiality, there's higher sets of standards than are currently in effect for being certified as a mobile home or an RV.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
what that does then is produce a form, a thing, a unit, a dwelling unit, that it meets a standards bar that creates a tiny home on wheels, or very much a cottage
So it's
appearance on wheels.
more durable, maybe with the construction standards that are required,
Yes.
and aesthetically nicer.
Now, it doesn't touch on aesthetics. They don't talk about
The-
roof pitch. You could do a shed roof or a gabled roof or a flat roof, and that's where I've tried to go in with some examples in the staff report where you could go above and beyond Appendix Q, which really talks about the quality of the structure itself, and then establish design standards for form. And you could even go so far as to say, it's got to have a mountain village vibe. These are tiny homes that are meeting, they're going to look like a little mountain cabin. You could go there. You could go so far as to say that pick apart what you don't like about mobile home parks and RV parks, and then create a set of very robust site standards that get you to something that makes you not have that reaction. So I would say that, the options are yours to come up with. This code, I could start with bringing the Santa Cruz County or Humboldt County code in here, and we could start picking that apart. What I did do in the staff report is give you the exact outline plus some in terms of content of a code that would be more robust than I've reviewed.
Well done.
Thank you, sir.
That's what I needed, thank you.
And I guess to my point of making a straw vote here, if we have a quorum here or a majority vote that says we don't want to go in this direction with a full-blown ordinance, we want to tweak our existing park ordinance to do an easy-as-you-go approach, staff needs clear direction.
Yeah, well, I want to get.
I'd like to request that.
Yeah, I'd like to do that after we hear from the public, but I think, you do need direction by the end of this evening, absolutely, and that's part of it. I wondered, we do require sheltered parking for, would this not require sheltered parking?
It's up to us.
Okay, we often do require that.
Again, you waived you established a pretty good precedent with the nest. Parking was one per bedroom, and you waived the covered parking standards.
Okay. And I noticed in some of these, the skirting, you show some with skirting, some without. I would think the skirting would be helpful in this climate to keep your pipes from not freezing. And the rest of this, I think I'll tackle as we get farther along. Commissioners, if it's all right with you, I'm going to open it up to public comment.
That's fine. Yeah.
All right. Would somebody like to come up and speak to us? Come to the mic, introduce yourself, if we've got folks here.
3 minutes.
And you've got 3 minutes. Is somebody timing?
I do.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ann Yulich, and I'm a Shasta resident.
Could you get a little closer to the microphone?
So we can hear you.
I'm
There you
interested in tiny houses and tiny house communities. And I just want to say that my interest is for workforce housing and the affordability issue. And I've always thought they were cute. I like well-made things, and the ones that I've seen are well-made. And I like the feel of them much more than mobile homes. Although, if I had a tiny house village, I would allow mobile homes also because they're affordable housing. And the aesthetic is great, but it's not the driver to me. I love tiny homes, like I said. But one other thing is you think about, you were saying about the single wide being so small and everything. Well, tiny houses are very small. And one of the things about living in a tiny house is having some outdoor space. And I'd just like to appeal to you to keep that in mind, because if you put them right next to the freeway, that's not going to be a great home or a great community. So that's well beyond aesthetic, being right by the freeway. So I just want to mention that. Thanks for your exploring this. Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody else like to come up? Introduce yourself, please.
My name is Steve Diaz. I've seen several of these tiny home communities, actually spent some time in a couple of them, and we're not going to get it done in 3 minutes. So in the interest of time, I'll go ahead and put together a short thing and email it to the commission.
That'd be lovely. Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Sanguinetti, and I've lived here for 35
It's hard. Can you maybe tip it up?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
There, how's that?
That helps.
Okay, I'm John Sanguinetti, and I've been living here since 1988, and I'm a homeowner, and I have some other property. One of my big concerns here is the parking situation. Right now, we don't have a bad problem, but I've seen this develop in other cities and other towns, and as you increase the density of the population and the housing, parking can become a major problem, and I'm very concerned about that. And in small housing communities or tiny housing communities or even RV park type situations, you get permanent people living there, and you get high density because the rents are high, and you get more cars, and they don't fit always in the park. They end up on the streets, and they become a big problem. So I think, especially with the snow problems we have sometimes and stuff like that, then I think that's something that really needs to be considered and looked at. So I thought, thank you.
Thank you.
Johanna L. Torfer, Mount Shasta. So I first want to just read my comments in my email, which I think we should also do something like I was talking about during public comment, where we allocate a certain space for these tiny homes on wheels. I think they look really cute and all of that, but and so I want to suggest the orchard and the landing space, because the city owns this and it's something the city could offer. But I think we need to think about the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid, because as some of the commissioners were saying, we have rules in place, and I haven't read Appendix Q yet, but we need to understand, are these permanent? They're really just like bigger RVs or different looking mobile homes. And what I was reading in the agenda is you could have a different neighbor potentially every 30 days. So is the intent really to have the ownership with the vehicle owner? And by the way, would they be required to have a license the entire time that they're there? Like, what if they have to, I think it's really meant more as more permanent housing, which then would be more like a mobile home park. And we could use those rules and adapt them. And it's basically just a different look and feel. It's just a different model. You have different model cars. We have different model homes. And I think tiny homes are something like that. I don't know if our community or any community really has the capacity to try to implement so many different rules and regulations for everything. And so if we have a basis for RVs already and mobile homes, including things like leases and who owns them, like an RV, the owner is the vehicle owner. The mobile home park, sometimes those can be purchased, but sometimes those are also rented out. Because the land is owned by usually a management company. And but some of these tiny homes, I heard tonight, 50 feet long by 14 feet tall. I mean, I don't think those people are going to be expected to go pop down to Ray's and pick up some groceries. You know, I don't think it's expected to be that mobile. But anyway, but I think we need to keep things more simple and not complicate things. And I love the look of tiny homes. I think they're adorable. But like if you're going to have one in your backyard, well, I would think that the homeowner of that property owns that tiny home, right? But if you're going to have a park of tiny homes, that's going to be a different situation. So then it's more like a mobile home park again, where you are leasing out the spaces. And then will those people be kind of like tenants? Will they fall under landlord-tenant rules? And will they have to comply with certain you know, HUD and fair housing rules? I mean, there's a lot of things to this, and I think it's just that it's a different look, and I think that's okay that it's a different look, but I think some of the rules are going to be underlying as to the use of the property, which is what you guys were talking about. So I think I would like to see us keep things more simple and not complicate things, and you know, what you were talking about, use what we have as a basis and let mobile homes look different, or let RVs look different, or create a hybrid.
That's time.
You know, something like that. I mean,
Are we at 3 minutes?
oh, yes, sorry. I don't know. Are we? I have no
Yes,
idea.
we're over.
Oh, yep, thanks, John.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Oh, there we go.
You're slow. You're slow.
Thanks, seconds.
Come on back up for 5 seconds.
Okay, well, thank you. So, commissioners, any additional comments, questions before we start talking about how we'd like Jeff to proceed? David? No? Was that a no?
No.
Okay. Tucson? Belinda?
I just know that the city council's directed us to do this, and that's what we're here for. And I think getting the quorum, I think that was a good idea, to take a poll.
Oh, straw poll,
I
yeah.
have one.
Huh?
I
Sure.
have one question for Jeff.
Yeah.
So, in that discussion we had, you said currently there's nothing stopping somebody from having a lot and putting 4 tiny homes on it and developing it right now, correct?
Wait, no, that's not what I said.
One. You could put one on your lot.
No, we don't allow tiny homes, Appendix Q or otherwise. Well, our code's silent on it, so therefore our code's prescriptive, which means, or permissive, and if it's silent, it's prohibited. So right now, we don't have any findings to make to support a tiny home on wheels to replace and come on site as an ADU or anything else for that matter.
Oh, we couldn't today? You
Not,
couldn't?
no, we don't have any permissions in the municipal code to allow it. What I meant to say, I thought what I said was, under our current park provision, 1608, we can park a tiny home at the KOA and, you know, park 10 of them there and call it a tiny home village if you want. I mean, but again, that's the current code. But that current code also has lots of site development standards which are way relaxed. You know, there's nothing about skirting or common areas or and again, that's the direction I'm looking for. Do you want me to modify 1608 pursuant to this public comment and other comments I've heard, or do you want to go all in and create a robust set of standards for a separate ordinance? Those are two vastly different ways to regulate this animal, and I need some clear direction on that.
Yeah, okay. I think my biggest holdup is how the site would be operated. Is the site operated as one developer who installs tiny homes and is the owner of all the tiny homes and rents them as long-term rentals? Or is the site developed more in the form of a mobile home park where they develop the site, put housing pads on it, and then rent out those housing pads to random individuals that want to bring and leave with their tiny home? And that's my biggest holdup with this whole discussion.
The choice is yours.
But I'm just saying, the latter I would be against, the other one I would support.
Could we have
Thank you.
both is the question.
Yeah,
That's
it's
part of-
either or both.
Either or both conditioned in such a way that...
You either specify or you're silent on it, and so you're silent on ownership.
So we could specify, C1, C2 could be developed and leased, where R2, R3 has to be owner, developed and owned.
That's a great solution. Yeah, you could do something like that. You could specify ownership by zone.
Just crafted a part of it. That's exactly what he's looking
Yeah.
for, yeah.
Okay.
If you want me to pursue that line of thinking, then yeah, I'm all in. Well, I'm all in either case, but that gives me, well, I think I could be half in and do the former. I would need to be all in because it's never been done before, to really develop a robust set of standards that I think get us where we're going to want to be. There's no precedent like this out there. This would be one of a kind right now.
Cool. Go ahead, Tucson.
I'll say, just from everything that I've heard here, and I have a fuller,
Tucson into, I
I
can't
have a
hear you.
fuller understanding of what we're looking for, and I think we do need to go down the road of a new set of standards for this type of housing.
Okay, back to Belinda.
Are we taking a vote?
It's sounding straw pollish as we go, so if you want to weigh in on that too while you're at it.
I want to go with the tiny home ordinance.
Okay. Vaughn?
I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Well, you need to say it into the mic, though.
I mean, he's asking whether we want to go with the mobile home park thing and just adapting tiny homes into the mobile home park ordinance, or if we want to craft a totally separate thing for this totally new thing.
My thought is that it isn't as new as everybody wants to make it sound, so I'd rather just call it a tiny home park, but it's a mobile home park with just tiny homes. That's my view of it. And if ADUs are, will allow one of those right now, I guess that's the way it is. I'm not nuts about that either, but.
No, they don't now.
Well, that's good then.
Yeah, but that's going to be a question is, as a part of this, are we going to allow tiny home villages under these new sets of standards? And while we're at it, are we going to allow an ADU to be a tiny home?
Okay, so my view for what it's worth right now is just to make a nice, really cool mobile home park, but it's just tiny homes, and not to have tiny homes as an ADU. That's exactly where I'm at.
Okay, and what zones would, under the former, so you're saying a nice set of standards for tiny home village, in what zones, I guess, would you?
A mobile home park type of zone.
Okay, so so that's back to modifying our current standards to be very restrictive about where they go.
Yeah, and then,
Okay.
and yes, there should be.
He's got a loud voice, but I just want to make sure.
All right, so the idea is that, I think there's a classy way to do it. I think whether it's owned, where like somebody does the thing and you buy the space or you rent the space, that's fine. I'm not overly hung up on that, but I think that's, yeah, I think that's kind of where I've settled on.
Okay, that's clear.
Okay, Alan?
I think it's different enough and more complex enough that we need a separate ordinance, and I like the direction you're going, David.
You like what David talked about in terms of, yeah. Okay, Cindy Lee?
I agree. I think that the tiny house ordinance is the way to go because there are enough differences, and I agree with having a way to decide on which zoning areas we're going to do that in.
How we treat them in the different zones? Treat them
Yes.
differently in different zones.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, and yes, I also think we should go with a tiny home ordinance that is specific to tiny homes. And I don't know yet how I feel about how we address them in different zones. I'm going to think about it and learn about it. There we go. Do you feel like you have enough information to move forward, Jeff?
I do, thank you.
Okay. Then,
Jeff, when you come back to us with more information, will you have Appendix Q as part of that?
So if we do any model where we would distinguish, if we go towards full ordinance, which we are, if we distinguish by zone ownership, and we address some of the other concerns I have, then absolutely. We're now in Appendix Q territory. So I will dissect Appendix Q for you and lay that up in a manner that makes it clear that an Appendix Q structure and a set of standards that are site standards that regulate how that structure looks and feels by its site standards, how it's going to look different from a mobile home park. That's where I'm headed with my next set of analysis. So, yeah.
Could you also put a zoning map of the
Yes.
city in there too?
Yeah.
I think we also are aware that given the type of product that they're doing, unless there's like just one or two, there will be restrictions just because of site
Right.
description.
dimension.
Right.
You know, the dimension it is, how flat it is.
Right.
There won't just be any lot that we can do this on.
Right.
Most of the areas along the President's where you are, if you had more than 2 units, it just
Yeah, you
wouldn't,
can't get
it wouldn't pencil.
Yeah.
It wouldn't,
So-
generally. I know you can be creative and do things, but then the price starts. Creativity costs money.
Right.
So,
We have a housing sites inventory, which is useful for that purpose, that's in the housing element, so I'll use that, and I'll try to do a thumbnail analysis. Don't know how much time I'll have to do this, but if I can dig into each of those, X hundred number of parcels in the city, what percentage of them actually meet the standard for, A, are they vacant? B, are they flat enough? C, are they large enough? Or, so on. So are we talking about, a tidal wave, a tsunami of tiny home villages coming? Or are we talking about, a high low? You know what I mean? To use title metaphors.
Well-
You never know that because, all of a sudden, everybody decides this is the place that they want to do that. That's how communities grow in certain ways.
that doesn't make land flat.
No, it doesn't.
I'd like to see Appendix Q. Can you just email that to us soon
Well,
so we can start
it's-
chewing on it?
It's a hyperlink in your,
Oh, is there?
yeah.
And I ignored it, sorry.
It's just the building standards for the homes. It has nothing to do with
The site planning.
development.
Oh, yeah, well, okay. I
Yeah,
didn't
it
think of that.
regulates the structure itself, and then what I've tried to put into the staff report is the rest of the categories of site development standards, which married together create a contextually sensitive form and structure that meets our standards.
It just says your wall has to be X minimum thickness, it has to have Y insulation,
Okay.
it can only be this wide, this long, this high.
Yeah.
I'd also like to know what kind of code standards these are regulated under.
I'm sorry, say again?
The type of, what the code standards these tiny homes are regulated under as far as building codes
That's the
go.
next
That's Appendix Q.
That's Q.
But does it have everything, in, like, do they have to have fire sprinklers and energy code stuff?
Oh, okay.
and that-
Okay,
that's a-
I don't know if Appendix Q goes that far. I don't think that it does. But I know some do. The tiny home village that I visited and the one that a friend lived in near Grass Valley was equipped with fire sprinklers and so on.
Sometimes that's a negotiation with the fire department as to whether or not you have good access. And if you don't have full
Right,
access,
right.
you sprinkle.
So, and I'm not seeing any paved roads here at all on these pictures at all, so I'm essentially, and I'm thinking about the fire truck thing again. And that's one of the other reasons why I was liking the actual concept of the mobile home type of park, only just being tiny homes, because it does kind of make things a little bit more, approachable by emergency services, those types of things. Also having to do with, I guess we're not going to call them hookups, but there's going to be sewer and water and electricity and the whole 9 yards underground.
You have two different lot type usages represented here.
Yeah.
The top one is single owner renting them out to long-term tenants. The bottom one is somebody that owns the land and rents the sites out to different people. That's why you're not seeing roads in the top one, because they came in, set the tiny homes, developed the land, and they're renting them out long-term.
Yeah.
All right. Did we get enough? Have we got enough? Are we good? All right. We're moving on to item number 6, which is also a discussion of our parklet ordinance. Jeff, you ready?
Yeah, this one, I don't think I can belabor as much as I did with introduction. I think it's pretty clear, I hope that it is. You're the regulatory body for parklets, okay? We've got 2 of them. They were set up during COVID as temporary facilities, period. Council and merchants have directed us to explore, not merchants have directed us, merchants have advised council, implored council to explore permanent solutions for these temporary things that people love and hate. There are 2 of them. They're both permitted. They both exist under the current parklet ordinance, which is attached to the staff report. And we are here to begin the discussion about how to modify, amend, not create a new, but amend an existing ordinance to convert these temporary facilities into permanent facilities. And in the staff report, I have shown you some precedents. I have given you design considerations. I think that the 3 options that I'm sort of boxing these for you are either no design regulation, in other words, let them go, let them be one-offs. If in the future we have, instead of 2, we have 6, let them do what they want. Come up with some moderate regulation which limits potentially material and character, but it also induces variety. Or option 3, which is high regulation. Again, this is on item 7, sub-item 3 in the staff report, which establishes a continuous material and character expression with pre-approved designs. Okay? That was what I found in the Palo Alto link. That's a hyperlink to their full set of standards. By the way, if you go in here digitally to your staff report, you can go to the Palo Alto standards. The Santa Cruz standards are 2-track. They have a custom and a pre-approval process, so 2 tracks, much like our design standards for objective design standards or discretionary review. Long Beach's is prescriptive, and Medford's is very functional, life, health, safety only. So that's make sure cars can't smash into it with, who cares what you put up there. It could be concrete K-rail, it could be steel barriers, etc. I think it's an exciting opportunity to talk about how you can meet life, health, safety measures, but also create something that we all can be proud of in terms of its aesthetic contribution to our Main Street. So, what I've tried to do is to simplify this, is ask you a series of questions, which are on packet page 12. And it is essentially the same question I was asking you in the previous item, which is, are we doing this or not? Are they permanent or not?
Do we have to renew those, Jeff?
Yeah, they're annually reviewed. That's the current ordinance
Right.
that
But
you
what I'm
regulate.
saying is, once the permit time comes up, are we obligated to renew it?
If they meet the standards that are specified in the ordinance, then, and if it's, unless the ordinance changes, then yes.
Okay, so that is something we can change.
Well, you can set criteria for renewal, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
As
But
in
we,
no renewal.
so you would only allow them to be in existence for a year?
Well, they're already here, there's two. What if I don't
Okay,
think they should
so
have an
your answer-
advantage
the an-
over anybody else of having one or not having one, but I'm not in favor of them in the first place.
Okay, so
that's
the
Well, so
answer to,
Let's get through his report, and then we'll get to commission
so
comments.
the answer to question one, the entry-level question is, are we gonna make these permanent or not? Vaughn's made his position clear.
What's permanent? Does it mean fastened to the ground or like they are now, but?
No, we are going to sunset parklets, period. We're gonna make them go away. They will not exist a year from now.
Oh, so permanence of having parklets, not that the parklet
Yeah.
itself is
So, I'm
permanent.
sorry, let me repeat to be clear. Our current ordinance specifies temporary.
Okay.
Temporary does not mean permanent. Tomorrow, we could not renew these because they are now
Yeah.
failing to meet a common sense standard of temporary, right? They clearly have transitioned to a permanent structure. The problem is the standards haven't kept up with it. So, what I'd like to do is take this one by one and get a straw poll on everybody really quickly for the sake of efficiency and go, are we wanting these things to be permanent or not? Okay,
I'm,
Permanent in allowance or permanent in life of the
Business.
parklet?
we're gonna create a set of standards that will allow them to be under a certain set of maintenance standards, which actually already exist in our ordinance, that if met, they can be renewed for another year. So they'll always be annually renewed, right? The permit, most
what is
permits.
permanent?
When my slow brain, when you say permanent means like we bump out the sidewalk, add pavement,
no.
put a fence around it.
Okay.
That's permanent in my brain.
Sorry,
That was
let
my
me-
brain too.
Let me, sorry for the confusion, let me be clear. Those are not parklets, and the staff report distinguishes between parklet and dining enclosure, okay? So in reaching out to these folks, both users and participants and passersby over the last couple of months, I've learned that, and looking at other communities, I've learned that there's a big distinction in people's minds about what is a permanent parklet and what is a dining enclosure. A dining enclosure is the curb extension. It is the dining enclosure that is surrounded by something much like what's in front of Yak's. So steel, low railing, up against the building wall, and the curb line goes out with a new curb that allows the accessible pathway by ADA standards to navigate around the dining enclosure. Okay? Sorry for not making this clear. In this lexicon moving forward, a permanent parklet means that parklet, we're gonna write an ordinance that allows that thing to be renewable year after year after year, unless and until the ordinance changes. So that's a big aha moment. It's separate and distinct from, we're gonna pursue a streetscape project, which is going to move the curb lines out, and on those new sidewalks, we are going to have street furniture and trees and lighting and dining enclosures. Okay, because the latter is a $5 million per parklet intervention. The former,
Wait a minute.
permanent parklet, is probably,
I know, it's not working.
So I
Sorry,
think
your
what our
explanation's
problem
hard for us.
is that permanent can still be denied if they don't keep their standards up.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
But if it's a not permanent, it means they're out of there now, or we can,
Yeah, if you want to.
even if their standards are
If you
good.
want to sunset this, then what we do is we don't move forward. And we say the code currently says
So
that
you're
these.
temporary and you're out of here.
Yeah, and so next year at this time, you don't see
Yeah.
parklets.
Okay,
Again, I'm trying to be clear, and I'm sorry that I'm not. I have low blood sugar. It's my fault for not having a snack late. But parklets are separate and distinct from dining enclosures, okay? Dining enclosures are a public works infrastructure that moves the sidewalk,
yeah.
okay? And that's many, many millions of dollars of effort that isn't what we're talking about tonight.
No, that's
I
fine.
only put it in here so that we don't get confused
Okay.
over the matter. Okay?
And we got confused.
Sorry that it backfired.
Okay, have you been through Chico?
Yeah,
They have
permanent.
dining enclosures, they're
enclosure.
permanent, and they were not millions of dollars.
Well, they had wide sidewalks.
Yeah, well, they widened the sidewalks.
Well, I can tell you that, I mean, what's the cost per square linear foot on,
We need pavement.
it's building face to building face, when you move curb line and you're talking about travel lane changes and park changes, I think it's.
No, but if there's no travel lane changes, we're just bumping out the sidewalk where the park area is now.
And
bringing that-
consuming the parking stalls.
Yeah, assuming, taking the.
Okay, well, okay.
We're not doing that
You
tonight.
pick, you pick the number. I mean, it's more
Probably-
expensive than parklets.
Oh, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely way more
$100,000.
expensive,
And
and
it's
probably $500,000, but
Right,
it's,
but it's also not going to be a one-off project. You're not going to say, merchant, pipeline, I'd like
Oh, right.
I'd like a dining enclosure, and
Well-
I'd like you to move it around here. The Public Works Department and City Administration and Council are gonna go, wait a minute, we've got a streetscape project in effort right now. If we're gonna bump out a curb on this side, might as well do it on the other. And what about down the block? If we're gonna do mid-block crossings, then it becomes part of a much longer, more expensive proposition.
Yes, it does.
That's where we get into millions.
Yes.
And that's where we get into a big, big, heavy lift. So I'm suggesting that we focus on parklets and we keep them as this garden variety thing that is wood structure in right-of-way. We're not moving curb line. We're not talking about dining enclosures. We're
Gotcha.
doing a
Yeah.
wood structure in the streets,
Yeah.
street.
Yeah.
How do we make it permanent?
how do we what?
How do we make that?
That's-
I'm gonna
I
stop
think the
using the word permanent.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
I'm
Let's get
gonna
rid of
start
that.
using the word,
Renewable.
thank you, we're not temporary, because we need to strike the word temporary from the parklet.
Yeah,
I liked renewable.
Okay,
Everything's temporary.
All right, so the first question is, would this be a parklet that could be renewed annually? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes?
yes.
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 That's you. You're up, Vaughn. Yes or no?
It's gonna be renewed.
Can you
The
renew your,
existing park.
can you renew that parklet in front of the pipeline annually?
No.
Yes or no? Okay, Alan?
Yes.
Cindy Lee?
Yes.
Okay, we've got 6-1.
Okay, now,
Number 2.
this is the permit duration. You wanna have these permits be annually renewed, 2-year renewal, 4-year. Vaughn, you can't weigh in, you're already out of the game.
Well, here's the problem I haven't heard anybody talk about yet, is the lack of competition. So if everybody else wants to get one of these, where does everybody park?
Around the corner, because we don't have a
Okay,
parking
let's keep
problem.
moving. We don't, we
Okay,
gotta-
so,
Okay, well,
my question on permit duration, hang on. My question on permit duration is, do you know, so far, what's happened? For instance, the one in front of Sparky's is looking a little ragged. And so because it gets bumped by a car, it seems annual might be a more functional, helpful way to approach it, to make sure we get the,
Okay.
we get the maintenance that we require.
I don't,
Compliance.
What do you think, David?
I don't think the permit duration, unless they're making structural changes to it or aesthetic changes to it, the permit should be indefinite. They should just require annual inspections.
Okay.
And so
And-
the permit is conditioned upon
It's
the,
conditional, right?
conditioned on the outcome of the
Correct.
inspection.
You don't have to reapply for a permit unless you're making structural or aesthetic changes, but annual or every 6-month inspections if it's not up to standards, you have 30 days to fix it or you lose it.
I think we're agreeing.
Inspection.
Annual inspection to continue to have the
But it's permit with annual, but you don't have to reapply for a permit every year.
I agree.
Exactly, it's just a renewal, it's not a reapplication.
Well, you do kind of, don't you?
Well,
What's our-
there's a reason that we do that. Again, that's what the current ordinance says.
get the money.
Yes. So what we're doing is we're inspecting these things. We have structural inspections, we have aesthetic inspections, and if we change this to have more aesthetics, we're gonna have more inspection. We're under a fee recovery mandate by council, particularly moving forward. So we're trying to capture our time spent during those inspections by reissuing the permit. And that gives us a trigger to say,
Yes.
okay, much like cannabis, for example. Cannabis is another one, where these aren't permits that are in perpetuity renewed through inspections. You have to reapply every year.
Is the reapplication simpler because you've already done it once? or-
Yeah, I mean, it's off the shelf, it's like
Okay.
cut and paste, but,
Right.
but yeah, it triggers the same review by me and potentially if they change stuff, coming before you guys.
Are we recovering the costs?
Yes, we are. And there's a fee in there for that offsets parking loss too.
Yeah,
So it's
I knew that.
$100 per stall. You may know that because you guys created this.
Per year?
$50 per stall.
Yeah.
Per month?
Yeah, 50 bucks, thank you. Yeah,
Per
50
month.
bucks, yeah. So the reason I said it's hundreds is because they both occupy two. So they're,
Yeah.
We don't actually do anything with money. We don't do fees, council does fees.
no, that's not what I meant. You created the parklet ordinance, or
Oh.
you should have, and
But
in
it-
there is a fee, so yeah.
Well, anyway, okay, so are we back to permit? Do we want to continue with the annual inspection renewing the permit? David?
Yeah.
Tucson?
Yes.
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 Alan?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, this is a pivotal one as well. In my experience, two previous cities that kept these as permanent, one did not, one did. The one that did transitioned to public. So in other words, if I bring a sack lunch to work, I can go sit down and have my lunch on a parklet. What that did was open up the use of those things to public benefit, not private
Right.
benefit of the public right-of-way. Secondly, it gave us more public accommodation in our right-of-way, not private accommodation in the right-of-way. The consequence of that choice would be that you're complicating the liability,
Right.
and you're complicating the fee, because Pipeline's gonna pay for a permit that everybody gets to use, but that's tolerable because frankly, they're using the community's public right-of-way, not their right-of-way, to increase their sales because they've got more floor area, tabletops, that they're not paying lease for, right? So there's a bit of a structural component to this when it comes to public access and the next number 5, which is fee structure. So keep those, they're kind of connected.
Do we have to decide those tonight? Because I honestly
No,
don't
you don't.
have an
You don't.
opinion.
These are questions that, a discussion item only. Consider what I've put here. Take another month to digest it and contemplate it, kick the tires, and come back with answers to these questions, yeah.
It's like those two, to me, I mean, I was in San Francisco and I just parked in somebody's parklet while I was eating something that I didn't buy in the adjacent but it was lovely to have a nice outdoor space.
Yeah, I agree.
So if it's publicly owned, does it require public access?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
Who gets sued?
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, you
Yeah,
mean under current?
exactly.
No, I meant
Who
if you
cleans
went
the tables?
ownership,
Right.
public access, you couldn't do public access now.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, well, by definition, they're currently public owned. They're privately maintained. So we allow by our permit and our ordinance, use of the public right-of-way for a fee.
But the improvements are private.
Yeah, but those improvements, they own the wood. We still own the ground under it.
Right.
We're letting them use it for free.
Was there an initial
For $100
cost? Was there an initial cost? I mean, for Vaughn's point, I mean, this did give them more, this currently gives them more tabletop space.
Right.
Was there an initial, during the COVID thing, did we say, okay, that's an equivalent of, I don't know, $20,000? I don't know.
No, the fee structure right now is
Just
outlined in
what-
the next, is just that. It's just 250.
How does that feel?
They're getting restaurant seating at pennies on the dollar.
Well, and that's why I
versus
wonder if we
rental
should work on the
rates.
fees. And I know it's not ours to work on, but I do think that that's a cheap set of tables.
It's-
It sure is.
I like the idea of them having them.
But I also really like the vibrancy that it creates downtown.
So the next sort of binary question is, do you want to keep it as is? In other words, permit fee, or lease by area?
I think lease by area.
That makes better sense, I think, too.
Yeah.
Sorry, out of turn.
So, back to this one little thing here, can Melanie just go sit in one of those places if she's not gonna eat their food?
Currently.
I didn't hear the question.
If it's public.
Oh, because we own it, because
They own the structure.
They own the
We
structure.
it. It's like a condo.
Okay, in practice, I've sat there a number of times and not purchased anything. I'm not saying that I went and said, can I sit? I'm not gonna buy anything, but
Yeah.
I've sat there and not bought anything.
But
Yeah.
there's times I've seen them put people in those seats, like they own the place, so that's
they do.
why I'm asking.
They're entitled to kick people out if they sit there.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah,
Okay,
they own the structure.
that's what I was asking. I didn't get
They-
that answer the first time, I don't think, or maybe I didn't ask it right.
Yeah, they own that structure.
They can
have
say
control
who
over it.
can and cannot
Right.
eat there.
So the question is, so they have a condominium, and they're not paying for the dirt under it, right? What we're saying is, if there's private ownership of that, by our municipal code, of the wood, what happens to the concrete under it? Are we gonna lease it, or are we gonna let them have it?
Lease it.
Okay, so are we good? Lease? Yes?
I don't know yet.
So public access is no.
Well, no, I don't, because it feels super weird, because you have to go into this space, and, they're coming back, seating people. I actually wouldn't. But maybe that makes me think we don't have enough outdoor seating, public outdoor seating, where you would want to go sit.
There are benches all up and down that street.
Yeah, there's
I
lots
know,
of.
there are uncomfortable benches. It's true.
They're not gonna serve you at those benches.
Right. No, and this was just, I don't know yet, but I don't have to
City-
decide yet.
City council determines lease rates, correct? Not
Yeah,
us.
city council makes the final decision on this as well.
Can we suggest what the lease should be?
Yeah, well, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
We can say lease by area and say a reasonable amount is this.
What
or-
would we-
Or a derivative to get there is this.
I think it
you know?
would just be based on average square foot
Right.
restaurant space in town.
What-
Maybe
Or-
75% of average.
Maybe
Well-
50%, because
But
part
you
of the year you're
can't
not out
use
there.
it. You
Yeah.
can't use it so much of the year.
I bet they use it 80% of the year.
Nah, I bet they don't.
So
You can bet
that's
your
another
bottom
question.
There'll be heaters out
That's
there,
another
no
question
time
is,
flat.
is this lease rate going to be annual or is it going to be seasonal?
Oh, I think it's only fair to be seasonal. But I wonder, does anybody pick them up and move
plenty
them?
of parking.
Because potentially 3 months of the year, it's inconvenient for plowing, and they're not using them.
But they're taking the space, you can't park there.
No, can't, does anybody build them so they can be picked up and stored over the winter?
Modular. I'm sure it could be constructed modularly.
Yeah. So if you set a standard that's pre-approved design, because what we don't have right now is we're silent on design. It's all life, health, safety stuff. So that's why you see this hodgy-podgy between the two. I think the ones that look better, again, permanent parklets, what am I supposed to use, Cindy Lee?
Renewable?
Renewable, thank you. Renewable parklets are distinguished from the permanence of a dining enclosure because it's not concrete, it's wood, right? So if we have the pre-approved designs, my design brain says, well, I like the pipeline better look and feel than the Sparkies. So if you're gonna do a pre-approved design, make it look more like pipeline, and then require when renewal comes along for pipeline, for Sparkies, to upgrade the aesthetic to better match.
That doesn't ask my question about picking it up for 3 months of the year so the plows can go through. Can we pick them up and move them and store them over the winter?
If you did a prescribed design, you could probably design them in a way to where they would be modular.
You could, and in talking to the merchants now, they are willing, both owners are willing to, are open to these discussions about a more proportional fee structure,
Good.
a more unified design aesthetic. But they dearly love them and want to keep them as renewable parklets, unless and until they go away because the curb line comes out with our new couplet design and the millions and millions we're going to get.
really going to do that?
Yeah, but that still doesn't answer my question about picking it up and storing it over the winter.
It's up to you guys. You can create those standards.
Well, and also I wonder, because I understand there's wildlife issues, wildlife habitat that's been created underneath the parklets.
Talking about rodents, though.
They are
Wildlife's
attractive
wildlife.
nuisances for sure, yeah.
Right, you've got
Yeah.
shelter and a nice food source.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if they're modular, pick up, removable, you can just kind of disrupt the habitat once in a while.
I think you'd find some reluctance among the ownership to completely scrape them and rebuild them in a more modular way. You'd get objection there.
Or just pick it up and put it on a trailer and haul it off.
I think
And
they're too big.
They're too big for that now. They'd have to be deconstructed. In the right-of-way, in the current ordinance, it does say that we can give them 72 hours and they got to be gone. If there's an emergency and we need to get rid of them, they're ours. It's already there. So you can ramp it up and be.
No, I was
We'll make
thinking
that
a
more explicit.
seasonality to them.
Wouldn't that come into play with what we charge them for what we charge them?
I think the problem with
If
having
it
the
made it-
seasonality is if we
Yeah.
have like a January,
Well,
where we
fair
have
enough.
a June with 2
Yeah.
weeks in the 50s and 60s, or January with 2 weeks
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah.
50s
Yeah.
and 60s. And
Yeah.
they want to open them up for a few days because it's nice and sunny out.
Did they do that this year?
They've done it a few times.
Yeah, I know, I've been there and kind of.
So to
cool
circle
times.
back on the connection between fee structure and public access, I hear you say lease by area, potentially a seasonal.
Does this general fund monies? If we're leasing it, to what end? It's like, what do we do with
Yeah,
that
I don't know,
revenue?
City council's decision what to do with it. But connected to this fee structure is going to be public access. So if we're going to lease by area, are we going to codify in this revised ordinance that they are publicly accessible or not?
I think the liability on that sort of thing is just going to be nutty
Okay,
big.
got it. Are we clear
Yeah,
now?
I agree. I think the
Okay.
way they're constructed, it would feel awkward to try to.
If the city
go
owned
in
them,
there.
then they'd be public access. If they're privately built
And they'd be
paid
built,
for,
yeah.
And if they built them, if they were built differently, like say, like the ones I was in San Francisco, where they were very open and they just had bench seats, they felt more like part of the streetscape.
Part of this
Who
discussion,
cleans this stuff if you open it up to the public? Then you're adding an extra burden, who's been sitting here and who sanitized the table and blah, 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 I'm sorry, but.
part of this discussion, eventually I'd like that street, and I did a master plan back in the 90s where we were looking at this being more of I assume you know the term Wohnroof?
Sure do, yeah.
Yeah, more of a living street,
Yeah,
and to where there would be more and more pedestrian access and less parking. Like that.
It's okay if you want to close off that section of the
Those are
road.
fighting words.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that.
But so with that, I'd like to approach all of these discussions with that in mind. How can we
Yeah.
move in that direction
Yeah. Well,
over
that's
time?
good context. So.
Well, short of doing that, one of the thoughts that I was looking at is, and this is why I'm struggling with this whole thing, is if those two go away, we do get the extra parking, but there's nothing to say people can't get permitted for for sidewalk cafe seating. And so that way you get the best, you get both.
You get-
And-
Where would you put sidewalk cafe seating?
Well, right now, you can have just a row of, think about St. Helena, for example.
Yeah, there's
Do it
just not
there.
enough table, there's not enough, we have narrow sidewalks.
so you'd
Not-
get
Yeah.
It's no
you'd
narrower
get
than
4
there.
seats in front of pipeline.
Yeah, you've got 20 tabletops out there, you can't get even close to that. That's why this is Sidewalk dining, we have a sidewalk dining provision in our, people could put tabletops out there
Okay, so,
right now. So we're not talking about that, we're talking about parklets as renewable, but with a twist of permanence.
okay, so then eventually, if everybody wants one of those,
Everybody.
We can designate
every
how,
business wants one of those. There's no parking there, so why have the road open? We should just close it and just save ourselves the trouble.
It's not
'Cause you
here.
can't-
We're not even close.
No, that would be millions.
There we go.
Okay, so can I keep ushering us toward number
Yeah.
7, or excuse me, number 6, which is, you want to keep yourselves as the approval body, or do you want to unload this burden to staff? Okay, keep it here. Number 7,
They don't know.
design and operations, do you want to keep it like moderate regulation, where you let the existing be, but the new ones come in, they have to meet a higher standard?
Yes.
I like option 2 because
Option 2.
I like to see what creative people come up with.
Got it. Okay?
And everybody's agreeing with me, apparently.
We are.
yeah.
If you don't agree, say something.
Okay, that ends that. I will come back with revisions to the ordinance itself based on this. It'll be a public hearing. You'll likely have more comments, so I feel like we're gonna go into probably a continuation of that, which is great, because.
Oh,
you-
yeah, 2 nights
Yeah,
at least.
so I would assume that what's gonna come forward next will actually be an actionable item, but you're gonna have 2 bites at this, okay?
To what?
Two public hearings to get through this next step.
So the whole conversation about dining enclosures was just to help us understand what we aren't regulating. I know, he wants to get out of here so badly.
Sorry.
No, I wanted to raise his blood sugar.
I had some chips, but they didn't.
Maybe that's not the right thing. You need something with some
Protein.
fat and
So,
protein.
Yeah, to answer your question, yeah.
Dark
but
chocolate.
It's dark.
That was why the dining enclosures was in here, not
Yeah.
because we're regulating them,
You're right.
only to differentiate.
And the reason I was trying to distinguish between temporary and permanence, because permanence is part of a conversation that's happening with the couplet, with Castle Street, with Lake Street. There's a lot of behind the scenes in Public Works, council, subcommittee, ad hoc committees are discussing what to do with our public right-of-way right now. It's very.
With our what? I'm sorry?
What to do with our public our right-of-way.
So where isn't a planning commissioner in on any of this?
Yeah.
The conversation right now is pure speculation. I would go maybe a step further. There's enough concept on the table right now that we can begin to understand what it means when we say daylighting Castle Creek. For a long time, it was just concept only. What is it? Wow, that sounds fascinating or interesting, or it's horrifying. We now have some renderings that are put forth by Tom
Hesseldens.
Thank you, who has done great work all over town, and there's an ad hoc committee that is exploring narrowing those options down.
Have there been any, I respect Tom a lot.
Can you make sure everybody can
I
hear you?
respect Tom a lot, Tom. But have there been any hydrological studies beyond Tom's to kind of truth that whole thing?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. The reason I haven't, brought you into the conversation, because A, I'm not part of it directly, my office happens to be within earshot of where they meet. But when it does get to a point of, you ought to know, because you're an appointed body advising council, then I'll bring you into the conversation. But suffice to say that, don't feel ignored. These are conversations only. Lake Street is awarded a grant for active transportation, safe streets for all. That's going to affect the right-of-way. This couplet conversation is still concept only. Or if you
What is a couplet? Do you
the
mean
idea of one-way street on
one way?
one way and one way on the other, and then combined with that is this, again, increasingly conceptual or conversation, at least from an alternative standpoint, the daylight of Castle Creek. So all this is now finally within the last 6 months or less, 3 months, conspired to co-locate in one spot all the same conversation. What are we going to do in the public right-of-way? It used to be, the boulevard south and boulevard north, and why is the pavement bad up here and horrible over here, and why aren't we, so now it's a conversation that's coordinated around a more increasingly focused right-of-way. Lake, Chestnut, the Boulevard, Castle, and so more to come.
What are our Lake and Alma?
Alma's hasn't been part of the conversation
We
yet.
just did Alma. We just spent a ton of money, as you know, on Alma.
But the couplet would re-engage at the pinch points, you know, and potentially, I mean, it could disengage and re-engage earlier, but then you've got left turns. Anyway, it's not even worth getting into right now. It's too speculative. So that's a longer answer to your question, but that is why I wanted to bring in dining enclosure, because if we have these conversations about public right-of-way, very, very fundamentally, part of these to justify grant funding and public benefit is wider sidewalks.
Yeah.
And
be nice.
safer crossings, mid-block crossings, better streetscape design, et cetera, okay? If you do that, you're gonna have dining enclosures, and guess what becomes very moot? Parklets.
Yep. Or
Okay.
even more, the sidewalk going out around them for the
Alan.
dining enclosure.
Dining
Alan.
enclosure supplants the
Those are better.
parklets, yeah, they go away,
We can't hear you when you,
Dining enclosures are better.
yeah.
That's all I really said.
So,
Sorry.
are we good with that item? I hear ya.
Which item?
we are working on the parklet ordinance. He wanted to know, I think that
No.
because we made the first two decisions, and now we're going to chew on the rest of it, but you're going to give us a framework to chew
Yeah,
from.
I'm gonna come back with an ordinance, as I said, probably 2 times more before you, where we really sit down and we look at the ordinance language, the nuts and bolts of the language itself. We have a public hearing, we tweak language, okay, and with these drivers that you've given me, and then we will likely continue this for one more version. I just feel like that, you're
Okay,
gonna.
so you got answers, I think, on ownership. On 3 and 4, I think you took care of. We have a lease by area direction on 5, planning commission, and on number 7, option 2. So I guess you did get all your
Yeah.
answers. Okay. And but we have people here, and if commissioners have any more comments of the commissioners before I let folks come talk to us, if they would like to.
I do have one comment, because there was a new law passed this year by the DMV or whoever does laws like that, saying that you're not supposed to park within 20 feet of a corner, which is bogus. But nevertheless, you have in here that these parklets can't be any closer than 15 feet. And I'm going, what is the law? Have you,
Yeah, I don't know, we'll figure that out when we get there.
okay.
I've seen Alina's got signs up all over the place, you can't park
But
within
nobody
20
here
feet of
cares.
the corner.
20 feet of a crosswalk.
Yeah.
No.
Right, and we're parking within 20 feet of a crosswalk, probably right now.
Corner, you
Somebody
can't park
is.
within 20 feet of a corner.
How do you,
Crosswalk.
Yeah.
how do you define the corner? Is
Period.
it the curb,
I just
Huh?
the next curb,
I
measure
think,
back
I
from that?
thought crosswalk.
Back, here's the curb, 20 feet back. It's a huge amount of space.
It's about safe pedestrian, it's about safe pedestrian crossings. It's a
Yeah,
brand-new law.
That's what it's about.
It's
But
in
you can
effect
cross.
now, and I did find it interesting that Mount Shasta has done
So that's your
nothing
street.
to enforce
I'm
it.
just almost
here's
fine
your
with that.
building.
Well, I
Is it
actually
from
looked up
here?
on that to see if it was gonna require a new parking study because of all the parking spots that we would
It's mostly cornered.
because of it.
But we don't know anything about that yet, Jeff, is that
Yeah, and
the
he
word?
said it doesn't,
ready
I
to go
just
there.
saw that in there as a, and that's
Yeah.
it, I'm done.
Okay, so, but we're not done with this yet. Would anybody from the public like to come and talk to us about the parklets?
Timer.
Are we on?
Is this on?
Yeah, there we
Now
go.
it's on. I didn't hear it.
All right, timing?
Got it.
Yes.
So I love parklets. I think they're great. I think it's wonderful for our downtown. I think makes it more vibrant. I think it increases our TOT and revenue for the city. But I do think there need to be rules around it, like, the safety, kind of the Medford, I guess, thing where I think it should be able to withstand, like cars bumping into it gently at 25 miles per hour so that we have safety. We need to address things like, I think smoking is already outlawed, but people still do it downtown. And I agree that, you know, all the maintenance should be on the business owners. I don't know if there's anything where people can, like if the neighboring property can give away their frontage to like the business owner next door, if they can sublet sort of their space. I don't know if that's anything that's come up. Maybe that's a moot point, but I think we should at least consider it. I talked in my email also about like, you know, parklet issues, and, you know, code enforcement as well as public comments should be considered if there's issues. I know in the past I've heard people comment about, you know, rugs or black soot that's oily from food droppings or whatever, and it makes it unsafe for people on the sidewalk, and that could become a liability issue. So I think whatever, you know, you come up with, that things like that are addressed so that it's taken seriously by the businesses. And I'm sure I believe they've addressed it, but noise levels, hours of operations should be considered, lighting, you know, so it doesn't interfere with cars. How does electrical get to the parklet? You know, is it okay to duct tape on the sidewalk? Or, you know, what are the rules around that? We should have like some thoughts on that. And then the rodents, except that I think we should do, you know, humane trapping and all of that. And since one-way streets came up, I just want to say, we're not Ashland. We're too small to have one-way streets in Mount Shasta, in my humble opinion. I just don't think, I think it would be difficult for people, especially since many of them are seniors and they use their vehicles to go shopping. And how are they gonna, I don't know. Maybe we can get electric scooters for everybody, but anyway. Yeah, and I wouldn't make them mobile or collapsible or whatever and remove them, because I think even though it's important for snow plowing, but I think it would make the structure less safe from a usage standpoint, and I think the business owners, like Jeff was saying, wouldn't like that. So I don't think they'd want to take it on and off. And so I think just increasing the fee a little bit for whatever you think the lease is worth.
Okay, thanks,
Anyway,
John. And we've got your email. Thanks.
Thank you.
And did you want to? Okay. All right. Well, commissioners, anything else to contribute to parklet conversation? Cindy Lee?
Nothing. I have nothing to add.
Alan?
I want more of them.
You want more of them?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, if we're going to do it,
Vaughn?
more, not just,
Into the mic so we capture what you say, please.
well, I heard me. So the idea is that if we're going to do it, yeah, it shouldn't just be two, and then, like I said, the competition seems unfair. So if we're going to do it, that's fine, but nobody's addressed parking, which I'm surprised because it comes up on every other thing that we talk about here today.
I don't like the big solid wall of the same look. I think I told Jeff this, that I was going into Sparky's and I was crossed on the other side of the street, and it was night, and then, you know, traffic wasn't too bad, and so I was jaywalking, right, middle of the block, and I ran into the walls, and I was like a little mouse going, which way do I go, because I'm gonna get run over, right? So it says something in here about 2 feet apart from each parklet, so I do agree with that because of that reason. Jaywalk.
Squeeze through that 2 feet?
That's why you're not supposed to
I
jaywalk.
can get through.
No, I mean, you have to find that 2 feet as you. There it is.
It's better than 30 feet or whatever. Yeah. Okay, Tucson?
No, but that's why we have crosswalks, Belinda.
I jaywalk too.
Not into walls.
There's not supposed to be a wall there.
All right. Thanks, team. I think we're good to go. Yes? You good to go?
Yes.
All right, lovely.
Thanks, Jeff.
Moving,
Oh, sorry.
moving on to item 7, commission and staff comments. I'm going to let Jeff start with staff comments. Even though you have low blood sugar, you did bring
Okay, this is quick, I promise. So normally this happens at the end or beginning of the year, not 4 months into it nearly. But we, for whatever reason, cancellations and so on. But this annual recap that I handed out gives you a sense of what the volume was over the year, and it gives you an estimate of workload for the forthcoming year. So I started with team member stuff. I've given you a handout for all who you are. What's important there, I think we all know who we are, but there's going to be some term details to think about as we cycle through. So let's not get caught flat-footed. I know that's mostly staff's fault this time around. We should have seated a quorum prior to sooner, but we just couldn't get council together in time, and we couldn't get staff together in time.
Is that used to be Kathy's took care of all that?
True, and she left, and we had a new clerk, and again, no gravity of detail is compelling right now.
I'm just wondering if that's Rachel's job.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The legislative update is attached. That's a 2025, mostly housing-related stuff that's coming down the pipe. I'm not going to talk about it right now, but there's a lot there. You can go online to that information, and there's hyperlinks everywhere, and you can geek out for an entire weekend over that material. Suffice it to say that I watch it. It's the Turner Center for Housing. They do a great synopsis. I subscribe to their feed, and I get heads up. Hey, pay attention to this. It's coming. So it's not on you. It's on me. I'm just giving you a sense of what we're up to.
More big changes?
Huh?
More big changes?
No, there's mostly globally tweaks to fix changes that have already happened, but they're still annual. So
Yep.
the workload, again, there's long-range planning by housing element, municipal code, and general plan. Most of that you already know. We are under municipal code. We already adopted or added 1850, which is objective design standards. That went into effect many months ago. However, we do need to still change architectural review 1860, and we need to change 1860, which is our underlying zones, to comply with the changes we made in the housing element. Okay, so that's coming. That's probably coming in April-ish. General plan, the housing element was done, safety element's done, noise element's in draft review. You're going to see that next, probably April, May. Beyond that, we're going to tee up land use next. And you'll probably start to see some initial reports from me later this spring with workload. So, but that's coming next. Land use is coming. Development services, the CUPs are there. The two that were, the one approved and the Spring Hill one that's incomplete. That's Eugene Sway's project. It's a submitted application, but it's incomplete because of CEQA requirements are not met. So we're still trying to get him to resolve his CEQA requirements. And when the application is complete, you guys will see it. Design review, Mountain Medics came in for a pre-app on October 2024. Their application is incomplete. When it is complete, you guys will see it. It's a new construction next to the building they occupy now up on Spring Hill.
On the same lot?
No.
Oh.
Maps, there's a condo conversion, two of them, actually. One is in incomplete status, that's in Carmen Drive, and then 556 Spruce Street. That conversion was issued. Those are ministerial permits that are issued at staff level. The 516 Spruce is, 804, 6, and 9 Carmen are not. That's coming to you. That's it's a condo split for those townhomes up on Carmen Drive. So existing construction, built as apartments, they're being converted to condos. That is in incomplete status right now. They're working on getting their parcel map together.
Didn't we have a condo conversion ordinance attempt that failed years and years ago?
I don't know.
Aren't fire safety improvements required to convert?
Yes. building code is very clear about that, yeah. So you'll see more about that. Will be part of the subsequent approvals prior to recordation of the map is building code compliance, but, yeah, and arguably even prior to entitlement. So, they have to demonstrate that, there needs to be something in the written record that says building code's gonna be met. Doesn't have to be done.
Gotcha.
But what you approve needs to indicate that. But that's all we can say about that because it's an active case and it's not before us yet. So, building permits, pretty slow. ADUs, we had one. Single-family dwelling, we had one. Triplex, we had one. I will tell you that under the housing element implementation status, sorry, I skipped over that, item 3A3, there's a matrix attached which has our first 2 years of housing element programs that are occupying most of my time. You'll see the matrix has the program number and then the implementation milestones in the right column. And so that you can keep abreast of that, okay? You'll notice in there, municipal code changes are in there. There might be some other regulatory changes that you guys need to weigh in on. And so that's gonna be either fiscal year 2024-25 or fiscal year 25-26, okay? If you have any questions, please feel free to hit me up with those, but that's what's regulating my workflow that's gonna come to you. And then in the other category, we are going to begin discussions probably next month about the Housing Advisory Committee formation. There's been interest and direction to formulate a committee to help us implement the housing element. And so it would be an ad hoc committee pulled together from 2 of you guys, potentially 1 or 2 council members, potentially someone in the industry, and potentially an at-large public member, and then staff. So, and that housing advisory committee would advise council, and I would report back to you on happenings that affect any legislation or quasi-judicial work that affects you guys. So anyway, keep thinking about if you want to volunteer to be on a housing advisory committee, and we'll talk about it next month.
That's not the one, what did I volunteer for? Do you remember?
Which time?
I don't remember.
I don't either.
On the meeting time, I'm all for starting this meeting a little earlier. And I know that we're pinching against work schedules, but 5:30 is the start time for council. If I get thumbs up from start time at 5:30 instead of 6, I'll make it a public hearing item. You got to set a policy, so we'll make it so.
So we need to let you know, ideally tonight, if we're interested in changing the time.
Yeah, if you're interested in going to 5:30, then let me know right now.
I'm okay.
So
What, wasn't it 7 for a while?
it was 7 for a very
Yeah,
long,
7
decade
o'clock, right?
plus. We used to start at
It's
7.
past my bedtime by the time you get
I
to
know.
the meeting. Bill.
Well, I think that for me, I didn't get dinner tonight, nor did Jeff, because we started so early. So
We got a quorum on 5:30?
I know, I should have
Did we
brought
get
a
a
snack.
quorum?
You
Make this
can't
decision
power down
now?
chocolate.
I
Yes.
think we have to make a decision now, because he'd like to put it as an agenda item, which I guess we could decide when it's an agenda item. But it'd be nice to know how people feel about it.
I'm fine with it.
5:30 it is, okay.
Are there any objections?
Does anybody not want 5:30
If you bring
besides?
snacks, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I know, like, no,
Protein snack.
nobody's feeding me dinner at 5 o'clock, so.
And everything
Nobody
closes
feeds me
early around
dinner,
here
and
too.
I can still get here.
At 5:30?
Yeah.
So is that a yes? Is that a yes to 5:30?
I think we have a lot of, I think most people think it's fine.
Okay, good. Message received. Okay, nonconformities chapter is 1824. It strikes me that it's a good enforcement tool for lots of things, for code violations. So I'm going to bring this up as a discussion item coming up. I don't want to belabor this conversation right now anymore, but it is, we have what's called a soft nonconformities chapter. You can allow nonconformities to exist in perpetuity. You can't take them further out of compliance with code, but you can never rectify them by our code. An alternative would be to say, if the same property with said nonconformity comes before you for any permit, you first must rectify your nonconformity. I think it's a good idea.
Definitely.
It's gonna give us way more teeth in our enforcement of code. And unless I say, here, heck no from any of you, then I'm coming forward. Okay.
Yes, all I
The
accept.
noise ordinance is coming before you in May. It's in draft form internally. I'm reviewing it for compliance with state and local mandates.
Who prepared that?
MIG, M-I-G.
Okay.
Parkments will be continued to April, tiny homes will continue to April. Sign ordinance is lower priority, but it's still out there.
It's-
May, June probably. And then,
Everybody wants to change our sign ordinance.
yeah, and then a dark sky ordinance is also on the horizon.
Is that a state
No
thing?
pun
or is
intended.
that-
Huh?
Is that a state thing, or is that?
Alan, I wish you'd get in the habit of
Golly.
speaking into your mic.
Is that a state thing, the night sky thing, or is that our own?
It's our own thing. You know, we have a policy in the general plan. We
Yeah.
do not have an ordinance.
Gotcha.
The municipal
Gotcha.
code, the objective design standards go a long way toward the guts of I think a pretty decent
Okay.
dark sky ordinance. And then our chapter 1870, which is the large sites code, which we've exempted housing from. It still includes large commercial, but it's still over like 20,000 square foot buildings. So it doesn't resolve the little guys downtown who are lighting up the whole sides of their buildings and, you know, scaring away the dark sky creatures.
Yeah.
So, you'll see me bring some ideas before you in discussion first, ordinance, and so on second. And that's all I got.
That's a lot.
That was pretty good.
You got a lot.
You actually got through 2 agenda items there, because I think you covered future agenda while
Yeah,
you're
I'm
at it.
done.
So we've done future agenda,
Yeah.
but we still need to do commission comments. So,
yeah,
excuse
I didn't
me,
look.
are you to,
We are, yes.
commission comments, Cindy Lee?
Commission comments?
Do you have anything to ask or question?
Did you, let's start at this end so you can hear. Let's start at this end so you can get a sense of what they're about. David, commission comments?
Not gonna add.
Except not
Hey,
David.
that's it.
Tucson?
I don't.
Oh, come on, you often do.
Well, it's
Melanie,
late. It's
go
late.
ahead, you go ahead.
Mine's already gone.
No,
Belinda? Vaughn?
More microphones.
I can't, wait, more microphones.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Okay, Cindy Lee?
And I agree with Vaughn, either more microphones or we can't be like squishing into the table to talk. We need to,
They need a longer
a
tether.
longer cord.
Can you next time give us a longer tether? So next time it won't be that way?
Oh, it's just a
thank you.
tape.
Thank you.
All right.
We'll fix you up.
Okay, that one's fixed. And oddly, I have nothing else to add. So, sorry to say, we're done. Item 9, adjourning our Mount Shasta Planning Commission regular meeting for March 18th, 2025.
All right.
Just